Welcome everyone to another Iceberg. Today, I'll be tackling the Daredevil Iceberg as a way to tie in with the series Daredevil Born Again. There will be minor spoilers for the show, so please go and watch the show before this video, or don't and complain that I spoiled it for you. I don't know, it's your call. Like with other superhero icebergs I've done in the past, I won't just be talking about stuff related to Daredevil himself, but also Daredevil-related characters like Kingpin, Bullseye, Foggy, etc. Not Punisher, though, because I plan to give him his own iceberg in the future. Speaking of future icebergs, I've got plenty of more superhero icebergs planned in the future, so if you're interested in those and you like the video, drop a like, comment, and subscribe. I've got plenty of other superhero-related icebergs already made, so you can go check those out in the meantime. Last thing before I begin, I have talked about some Daredevil-related topics before, so if you want to see me talk about these topics, go check out these videos, because I won't be talking about them here. With all that being said, let's begin. Just kidding, sorry, real quick. I've finally decided to do channel memberships after a few people have asked me for them. There's 3 tiers. The first tier is $3, and you'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis, and priority replies to comments. Tier 2 is $5 a month, which includes all of that, but your name will now be at the end of the video. I'll even read your username out. And finally, at $7 a month, you'll get all of that, but you'll also get my videos early. How early? Early. Could be a few days, could be a day early, or it could just be a few hours early. It all depends on how long it takes for the video to render. I am very new to all of this, so if you got any ideas for how this can improve, let me know. And now, for real, let's begin. Daredevil 2. Daredevil 2003 was meant to be the beginning of a film series. However, only the Elektra spin-off film ended up happening. Daredevil 2 was cancelled, not because the studio wasn't interested, but because Ben Affleck wasn't interested. After the release of the film, Ben Affleck refused to return to the role unless the sequel would be darker, even suggesting that the sequel adapt Born Again or Guardian Devil. He only agreed to cameo in Elektra due to Jennifer Gardner, who he was dating at the time, asking him to do it. He would then publicly state in November 2006 that he would never put on a superhero costume again, as his experience making Daredevil 2003 was humiliating to him. He would then go on to play Batman in 5 different films, and had a horrible time doing most of them, not wanting to recast, and because the Elektra film was a mess, 20th Century Fox cancelled the sequel. Unfortunately, we don't know all that much about what this sequel would have been about. What we do know is that Karen would have had a much bigger role in the film, and the film would have explored her relationship with Matt. There was also talks about Kingpin returning, but that's all we know. Stilt-Man. First appearing in Daredevil issue 8, released in April of 1965, Wilbur Day started out as a scientist who stole hydraulic mechanical legs from his boss, because he believed that his boss was an idiot for wanting to use this device to help people. Using these legs, he became the villain Stilt-Man and began to do crime. Around this time, he would hire Matt Murdock to be his lawyer because he wanted to sue his boss. He probably shouldn't have done this though, because in this attempted lawsuit, it would be revealed that he was Stilt-Man. During the ensuing fight between Daredevil and Stilt-Man, a shrink ray that he had also stolen would activate and shrink Stilt-Man down to the size of an ant. After this incident, Wilbur would somehow grow back to his normal size and continue doing crimes, becoming a reoccurring villain for Daredevil, while also sometimes battling Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, Falcon, and Black Widow. He would also work alongside a variety of villains, like Hobgoblin, Kingpin, and Elektra. His days of causing Stilt-related mayhem came to an end when he decided to become a hero and joined the Pro-Superhuman Registration Act during Civil War. He'd even get married to the villain Princess Python. As a hero, he decided to go after Fulvio Morcella, a man who, made explicit videos involving minors. While Stilt-Man was trying to arrest him, Punisher showed up, looking to kill him. Stilt-Man was like, "Hey man, let's team up and do some good." But Punisher decided to instead murder Stilt-Man because he used to be a villain. Punisher would then kill Fulvio. He also blows up Stilt-Man's funeral for good measure. In response to Stilt-Man's death, a bunch of people created a terrorist group called the Bastard Sons of Wilbur Day, and they wanted to get revenge for Stilt-Man by attacking people who use technology. Despite the fact that Stilt-Man's whole thing was that he was using technology, but whatever, this group didn't really last very long. Years later, Stilt-Man would be revived by Ben Reilly, who was the Jackal at this point, and he would return to being a villain. But after a little while, Stilt-Man decided to go big, and traveled into space, where he reprogrammed a bunch of robots, and used them to become a dictator of an alien village. Iron Man would then show up and defeat him. As for his powers, Stilt-Man's main gimmick was his battlesuit, which could extend its legs up to 290 feet. He can also extend his arms quite a bit too. He's also got machine guns built into his arms. He also sometimes has a shrink ray, or just a plain old ray gun. There's also two different Stilt-Men. The first is from Marvel Team-Up Issue 9, released in June 2005. His name has never been revealed, but he took up the Stilt-Man title and battled Daredevil and Spider-Man a few times. There's also Lady Stilt-Man, but she's mainly a Spider-Man villain, so I'm not going to talk about her. As for his appearances, Stilt-Man's only ever appeared in Iron Man the Animated Series, but his legs were seen in the Netflix Daredevil series. Daredevil x Black Widow. Daredevil is known for dating and having one-night stands with a ton of different characters, even other heroes. Probably his most well-known relationship with a hero, besides Elektra obviously, was with Black Widow. In Daredevil issue 83, released in October of 1971, Mr. Murdock defended Natasha in court after she was put on trial for a murder she didn't commit, as the person that she supposedly killed was a robot. In the aftermath, Matt asked her out to dinner, but she declined, as she wanted to figure herself out. This didn't take very long, because in the very next issue, she invited Matt to Switzerland, as she believed that she found a guy who could cure blindness. And upon arriving in Switzerland, the two began a relationship. Oh, and the guy that claimed that he could cure Matt's blindness was actually a robot assassin from an alternate future. Anyways, their relationship would end almost immediately when the two returned to New York City in the very next issue, and Matt decided to hook up with Karen only moments after Karen's boyfriend proposed to her. The two of them decided to get married, but broke up in the very next issue, and that's when Matt and Natasha began their relationship for real. The two would work together and sleep together for quite a while, even living with each other in San Francisco. Their partnership and relationship would end in Daredevil issue 124, released in May of 1976. This was mainly due to Natasha wanting to work solo again. She would then help form a superhero team only a few issues later. Since their breakup, they haven't gotten back together in a long-lasting relationship. However, they have had many hookups over the years. Muse. First appearing in Daredevil issue 11, released in September of 2016, Muse is one of Daredevil's most evil foes. Nothing is known about Muse's background, not even his name is known, but what we do know is that he really loved art. And killing people. Muse began to kidnap a bunch of people in order to collect their blood, so that he could use it to create murals around New York City. How many people did he kidnap? Well, the exact number is unknown, but we know that it was more than 100. But it wasn't just murals that he would create. He would also use the bodies of his victims to create art pieces. Muse, obviously, caught the attention of the heroes of New York City, notably Daredevil and Blindspot. More on Blindspot later. Blindspot would be captured by Muse and have their eyes gouged out before Daredevil could rescue them. But Matt did rescue him, and during this encounter with Muse, Matt discovered Muse's personal blood bank and freed all of the surviving victims. And this would lead to Muse being arrested. Muse would eventually escape prison and decided to support vigilantism, having been inspired by Daredevil. He would create artwork across the city in support of heroes, which, I'm sure the heroes were thrilled about, but in the process would kill a bunch of cops. Blindspot would eventually get his eyesight back thanks to the hand, and would fight Muse. Upon being defeated, Muse would walk into some fire and allow himself to burn to death. But even in death, Muse continued to kill. His spirit came into contact with a woman named Morgan Whittier and convinced her to embrace her darker side, essentially becoming the new Muse. And this story is currently being published, so if you want to learn more, go read the comics. As for Muse's powers, Muse has superhuman strength and speed, thanks to him being an Inhuman. Oh yeah, I probably should mention that earlier. Muse is an Inhuman. His most unique power is that he's incredibly difficult for people like Daredevil to track, as his body pulls in sensory information from all around him, allowing him to blend into his environment. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in the MCU. Daredevil in the Avengers. Daredevil is probably the most popular Earth-based Marvel hero to not be part of the Avengers. He's been offered a spot on the team many times over the years, but he always declines. This is mainly due to a couple of reasons, like how he prefers to stay local to Hell's Kitchen, apparently being around so many people at once would cloud up his senses, and one time when Cap asked him to join, Matt was being hunted by the US government, so he wasn't really in a position to join. So he's never been an Avenger. Except he has. Yeah, contrary to popular belief, Daredevil has actually been a member of the Avengers. In New Avengers issue 16, released in September of 2011, after helping out the New Avengers, Luke Cage asks Matt to join the team, and unexpectedly, he accepts the offer. Most likely due to Luke Cage being the leader of the team at that point. Daredevil would work with the team until New Avengers issue 34, released in November 2012. But he doesn't quit the team. Instead, the team disbands. Deleted scenes. Not everything for a film or show ends up in the final product. Here's some deleted scenes from films and shows involving Daredevil characters. Also, for some reason, I couldn't find any deleted scenes for the trial of the Incredible Hulk, Daredevil Season 3, The Defenders, or She-Hulk, so I won't be talking about them here. As for Daredevil 2003, an entire subplot about Matt and Foggy representing a man named Dot Jackson, played by Coolio, was cut from the film. All but one of Karen Page's scenes from the film were cut. A scene of Bullseye walking through a metal detector at an airport was cut. Bullseye was supposed to kiss Elektra after he stabs her and throws her off the building. A scene of Kingpin killing 2 of his own bodyguards was cut. There was also supposed to be a scene in which Matt interrogates a corrupt cop in a parking lot. And finally, the final fight between Kingpin and Daredevil was supposed to be far more brutal. All of these scenes were added back into the film with the director's cut. As for Elektra, a dream sequence was cut, in which Elektra would dream of Matt, who would ask her to return to New York City. Ben Affleck would have reprised the role. More of Elektra's childhood was also supposed to be shown. The scene where Elektra decides not to kill Abby and Mark was supposed to be a bit longer, and some sort of energy ring would have been present in the film. As for Daredevil Season 1, while captured by the Russian gang, Sergei was originally going to threaten to R-word Claire, and after being rescued by Daredevil, Matt and her would bang. Very Ride to Hell Retribution-like. Punisher was supposed to make a cameo at the very end of Season 1, in a post-credits scene, where he would be the one who kills Leland Owsley. Much like Michonne's cameo at the end of The Walking Dead Season 2, Punisher would have been played by a stand-in actor, and we wouldn't see his face, just the skull logo. And finally, Elena Cardenas' death was originally going to be far more graphic, with her being killed in a bombing that results in her losing her limbs. As for Daredevil Season 2, in the episode 7 Minutes in Heaven, Jimmy the Bear was supposed to encounter the Punisher in prison, and he probably wasn't gonna make it out of that scene alive. As for Spider-Man No Way Home, Matt was supposed to appear in one other scene, where it would be revealed that Matt was hired by Happy to represent him while he was being investigated by Damage Control. As for Hawkeye, a flashback to 2012 was supposed to happen, where we would have seen Fisk first meeting with Eleanor Bishop. Fisk was actually supposed to appear much earlier in the show, making his debut in Episode 3, during Maya's karate flashback. He would tell her that her father won't be able to pick her up, so he's doing it instead, and will take her to go get some ice cream. Another scene from the karate flashback was cut, where Maya would meet Kazi, aka Clown, for the first time. It would be revealed that he only became interested in her because their parents were working together. As for Echo, unfortunately, Marvel's been tight-lipped about this show's deleted scenes, so the following scenes that I'm going to mention are currently just rumors from leakers, so they might not be true. A subplot from Episode 2 was cut, involving Maya having to find Biscuit's dog, Billy Jack, after he got lost. Originally, the flashbacks to Maya's ancestors were supposed to happen at different points in the show, with them appearing after Maya unlocks and uses a power, and upon using said power, a mark would appear on her face. And finally, Daredevil was supposed to be more than just a cameo. Throughout the show, Matt and Maya would text each other about what Fisk's up to. Maya would then travel to New York City to finish up some loose ends, which would lead to her appearing in Born Again. As for Deadpool and Wolverine, while Elektra and Bullseye appear in the film, the 2003 Ben Affleck Daredevil is only mentioned in the film, though at one point in time, he was considered to appear in the film, appearing in concept art. Though Ben Affleck was never actually asked to return to the role, so it can be assumed that Daredevil's appearance in these pieces of concept art were either just an example of artists using characters as stand-ins, or they realized there's no way Ben Affleck would agree to reprise the role, so they cut him. And finally, for Daredevil Born Again, an alternate opening to Episode 4 was filmed, in which the White Tiger amulet would begin to glow as Angela Del Toro came close to it, suggesting that she might become the next White Tiger. Gladiator. First appearing in Daredevil issue 18, released in May of 1966, Melvin Potter was a costume designer who hated superheroes because, well, he felt that he was simply better than them. So he decided to prove this by creating his very own superhero suit. Although, instead of becoming a superhero, he decided to use the suit for criminal purposes, becoming the villain, the Gladiator. Shortly after this, Foggy Nelson would show up to his doorstep and ask him to create a Daredevil suit for him so that he could trick Karen Page into thinking that he's Daredevil. Gladiator did so, but only to mess with Foggy, as when Foggy put on the suit and pretended to fight Gladiator to prove that he's Daredevil to Karen, Gladiator just knocked him out with a single punch. The real Daredevil would then show up and defeat him, and so began the Gladiator's long rivalry with Daredevil, coming face to face with the Devil of Hell's Kitchen numerous times, even facing off against other heroes like Iron Man, Man-Thing, and Ghost Rider on occasion. He would continue to battle heroes and do crime until eventually deciding to give up being a villain and reform, going back to the costume shop business, even helping out superheroes like Spider-Man with costume repair on occasion. He would even get married to his therapist, though their marriage wouldn't last and he would divorce her, eventually marrying somebody else. He'd one day retire from the costume business and become Matt Murdock's bodyguard, though his bodyguard days wouldn't last very long, as he would eventually be forced into working for the criminal Alexander Bont, who lied to Melvin, claiming that he had a 4-year-old daughter that he didn't know about, and that if he didn't help him, he would kill her. So he helped him and was sent to prison. And there, he was attacked by the villain Mr. Fear, more on him later, who injected him with chemicals that made him hyper-aggressive, which led to him attempting to kill people, including his very own wife. While he would eventually be cured of this hyper-aggression, the chemicals had lasting effects that caused him to hallucinate and hear voices in his head. And as of right now, Melvin is still suffering from these effects in a psychiatric hospital. As for his abilities, his gladiator suit has a bunch of built-in titanium blades, like wrist blades and circular spinning blades on his arms. These spinning blades could even be launched for ranged attacks. As for his appearances in media, Melvin's only ever appeared in the MCU. The Yellow Suit. Daredevil is mostly known for his red-themed costumes, but he didn't start out wearing red. Well, he did, but it was originally paired with yellow. Appearing in his very first appearance, this yellow costume lasted for years in the comics, only being replaced with red in his 7th issue. I lied. This costume didn't actually last very long. The in-universe reason as to why he stopped wearing the yellow suit is because the red suit was far more comfortable to wear. The out-of-universe reason as to why his costume changed was because of Marvel artist Wally Wood, who wanted to focus Daredevil's color scheme on the devil part of his name. The original yellow costume has returned a few times over the years, but it never lasts very long. Probably the most iconic return of the yellow costume was in the limited series Daredevil Yellow, written by Jeff Loeb, and releasing from June 2001 to January 2002. As for its appearances in media, it's appeared in Marvel Ultimate Alliance and the MCU. Original Born Again series. Daredevil Born Again is a rather strange show because its first season is actually a result of a hybrid between two different creative teams. Originally, the show was intended to run for 18 episodes for its first season, and was described as being its own thing, separate from the Netflix show. This version of the show was filmed up until September of 2023, where the show's production was halted due to the 2023 actors and writers strike. This led to Marvel Studios deciding to completely rework the show, as heads up at Marvel Studios had watched the footage that was filmed and came to the conclusion that it wasn't very good. And it wasn't just them. Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, and John Bernthal were all unhappy with how the show was being handled, so it was decided to make the show connect even more with the original series, cut the episode count in half, and change up the story a bit. But it was also decided to still use some footage from the original version of the show, as some scenes and storylines were pretty good. For example, episodes 2 through 5 mostly consist of footage filmed for the original version of Born Again, while episode 1 was made completely fresh. So what do we know about this original version of the show? I'm sure we'll learn a ton more in the coming months, but as of right now, we only know a few things. For example, we know that the original show was almost going to be afraid of acknowledging the Netflix series. It would still be canon, but it wouldn't really be acknowledged all that much. The show was also not going to have the same tone as the Netflix series, or the Born Again series that we ended up getting. Karen and Bullseye were also just straight up not going to be in the show. Foggy would still appear, but his appearance would be extremely minor, bordering on a cameo. Vanessa was also recast, but this recast was only done because her actress, Ayelet Zerer, was busy with another project, and now that the show was filming at a different time, she was now available. Sandrine Holt was the actress who played Vanessa in the original version of the show prior to its creative overhaul. According to John Bernthal, he wasn't a fan of how the show was going to portray Frank. He's never gone into detail about this, so we can only speculate on what he meant. My theory is that in the original version of the show, Frank was going to be portrayed as either a flat-out villain or a flat-out superhero. But again, that's just speculation. White Tiger. First appearing in Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, issue 19, released in November of 1975, Hector Ayala was a Puerto Rican immigrant living in New York City who was desperate for money, so he began to do small crimes. This all changed when he found the amulets of power outside of a martial arts school. He took the amulets and placed them together, creating a necklace, and doing so gave him not just incredible powers, but also a costume. He was then given visions that revealed to him that he was now the hero White Tiger. As White Tiger, he would go on many different adventures, from tracking down the villain Copperhead after he attempted to kill the charity worker Human Fly, to failing to save his brother from being killed by the group known as the Corporation. Yeah, it wasn't all fun and games. He'd also help out various heroes like Iron Fist, Spider-Man, Shang-Chi, and most notably Daredevil. Although admittedly, he didn't interact much with Daredevil until his final few days of life. After a near-death experience, Hector would retire as White Tiger and tried to live a normal life. That was until he was found at the scene of a murder he didn't commit. He was arrested, which led to Matt becoming his lawyer in order to prove his innocence. various heroes would come in to testify for White Tiger, including Jessica Jones, Reed Richards, and Doctor Strange. But despite all of this, the jury found him guilty. After being found guilty, Hector lost it and escaped the courtroom, stealing a gun. When ordered to lower the gun, he didn't, and the police shot him to death. As for his powers, while wearing the White Tiger amulet, he was given super strength, speed, agility, and healing. He also practically had night vision, and his senses allowed him to hear things from far away. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Marvel Future Fight, Ultimate Spider-Man, and the MCU. Shortly after his death, his niece, FBI agent Angela Del Toro, was given the White Tiger amulet. First appearing in Daredevil issue 58, released in March of 2004, she decided to use the amulet and become the new White Tiger, asking Daredevil for tips about becoming a hero. Angela would fight crime alongside Daredevil, Iron Fist, Black Widow, and more, but her time as White Tiger hit a bit of a snag, as one day she was murdered by Lady Bullseye, more on her later, only for her to then revive Angela as her servant. She would spend some time being her servant before being freed. But this wasn't the end of Angela going bad. After Matt became the leader of the Hand, she became one of his top lieutenants, and would order for Dakota North and Foggy to be killed. She would eventually be arrested, and the amulet was taken from her. She'd later become furious upon learning that Ava Ayala became the new White Tiger. She then worked together with the villain The Maker, aka Ultimate Reed Richards, to take back what she believed was rightfully hers. She would then be given an amulet of power from another universe, allowing her to become a White Tiger in order to battle, well, White Tiger. She would win the fight and would become even stronger, although Ava would later take back her amulet and free Angela. Yeah, it turns out this entire time, Angela was still possessed by whatever Lady Bullseye had done to her. After being freed for good, Angela would retire from being White Tiger. As for her powers, she has all of Hector's White Tiger powers, but with the added power of camouflage. If she stayed still long enough, her costume would blend in with her environment. As for Angela's appearances in media, she's appeared in the MCU and Marvel Strike Force. There's also 3 more White Tigers in Earth 616, one being a creation of the High Evolutionary who became a hero. There's Kevin Cole, who I'll talk about in the eventual Black Panther Iceberg, and the last one being Ava, Hector's sister, who's probably the most famous White Tiger, and who I've already briefly mentioned, although none of these characters really have anything to do with Daredevil, so I'm not going to talk about them here. The White Suit. In the aftermath of the Red Fist saga, Matt would lose most of his memory and didn't remember being Daredevil, instead becoming a priest. But this run as a priest wasn't very long, as Matt would face off against his former friends who had been possessed by the 7 deadly sins. Being a priest, he exorcised a couple of them, but it was clearly too much for him. So Doctor Strange showed up to help out. But instead of just fighting Matt's battles for him, he helps Matt remember who he is, and is able to bring him back to his normal Daredevil self. And upon regaining his memories, he receives a bright white costume. This white suit is tied directly to Matt's belief in God. This actually isn't the first time that he wore this costume. Matt first wore this suit while in Hell, fighting the demon Kralik. And while in Hell, the suit gave him some supernatural abilities, like the ability to create dual energy swords from the horns in his helmet. This suit is known as the Hand of God suit, and was seemingly made by God, because both times that the suit appears, it appears. There's no creation process. Matt is just magically in it, and it just magically disappears. Will we ever see this white suit again? Who knows? Daredevil Season 4. The Netflix Daredevil series wasn't supposed to end with its third season. The original plan was that the show was going to last a lot longer, but due to Netflix canceling all of the Defenders shows, Daredevil had to end, which was a pretty shocking blow to the team behind the show, as it was cancelled literally as they were planning out and writing Season 4. So what was this fourth season going to be like? We don't know a ton, but we do know that the main villain of the season was going to be the Owl, more on him a bit later, who would take over as the new Kingpin of the criminal underworld in Hell's Kitchen after Fisk was sent to jail. Typhoid Mary was also going to appear in this fourth season, and Melvin Potter would have finally become Gladiator. Now, you're probably wondering where Bullseye is in all of this. Well, he wouldn't have shown up in Season 4 unless it was a very brief cameo, as Eric Olson, Season 3's showrunner, and who would have presumably been Season 4's showrunner, has said that Bullseye would have returned in Season 5 in order to give him some time to recover from his injuries and surgery from Season 3. Luckily, we ended up getting Daredevil Born Again, which is pretty much just a fourth season of the original show, but clearly the show isn't using any of the plans created for the original fourth season. What if the world knew that Daredevil was blind? In What If Issue 8, released in January of 1978, the world finds out that Daredevil is blind, thanks to Electro. During a fight between Electro and Daredevil and Spider-Man, Electro sets off an extremely bright light of electricity right in front of Daredevil. Noticing that he didn't react to it at all, he quickly comes to the conclusion that Daredevil is blind. In order to confirm this, he demands Daredevil tell him the color of his costume, and Matt can't answer, confirming to Electro that he is. So Electro decides to rat Daredevil out to the Daily Bugle, who proceeds to tell everyone in New York City about it in their newspaper. While Matt's friends tell him that he should probably quit being Daredevil, since people are going to take advantage of this knowledge, Matt refuses and continues to fight the good fight. But his friends were right. His villains quickly become ableist, and used his lack of eyesight to their advantage. At least, I think that's them being ableist. Would this be considered ableist? Whatever. Because of this, Matt decides to undergo an experimental procedure to regain his eyesight. So he travels to the fictional country of Lightenbad in order to have a doctor there do the operation, and the operation is a success. But it turns out that Lightenbad is ruled by a dictator, and that dictator didn't really like the Doctor. So Daredevil protects the Doctor from this dictator, and in the fight, Matt is hit with a bunch of radiation while trying to prevent the dictator from launching a superweapon, and this radiation takes away his powers. So now he's just a guy. After one more fight against the villain, the Owl, he reveals his secret identity to the public, and instead of continuing to fight crime like other heroes without powers, Matt decides to retire and gets married to Karen. Daredevil gets his eyesight back. Daredevil is probably the most well-known blind character in all of fiction. Despite this, he's actually gotten his eyesight back in the mainline Marvel Universe multiple times, but they were all very brief. The most famous example was in Superior Iron Man issue 2, released in December of 2014. This was during Tony's whole Superior Iron Man story arc, where he became evil. More on that in the Iron Man Iceberg. So in the story, Daredevil decided to go in and investigate his former ally and convince him to stop being the superior Iron Man. In order to get him off his back, Iron Man decides to give Matt back his eyesight using some extremists. At first, Matt is very thankful, but Tony states that in order to keep seeing, he's gonna need constant boosters, and these boosters would come from him, essentially making Matt dependent on Tony. Matt sees through this manipulation and refuses, so Tony takes back Matt's eyesight and punches him in the face. But before Matt loses his eyesight again, he travels to go see what Foggy looks like. Pretty crazy story, but this isn't even the craziest way that Matt's gotten his eyesight back. In Daredevil issue 223, released in June of 1985, one day, out of nowhere, the Beyonder shows up at Nelson and Murdock, looking to hire Matt and Foggy. Matt decides that he doesn't want to work for, you know, the Beyonder, but Foggy is quick to agree as they need the money. But eventually, Matt comes around and accepts the job. And upon accepting the job, Beyonder gives Matt his eyesight back as payment for his services. So what exactly does the Beyonder plan on doing with Matt and Foggy? Well, he wants to buy the Earth. No, really, he wants to find a way to legally purchase the entire planet. Foggy realizes that this is impossible, so he gives up on the case, while Matt gives up on the case because he doesn't deserve to see. No, really, his words, not mine. He sees how beautiful the world is, and comes to the conclusion that he just doesn't deserve to see. So the Beyonder takes away his eyesight and leaves. And finally, the first time Matt got his eyesight back was in Daredevil issue 106, released in August of 1973. During an adventure with the hero Moondragon, she's nearly killed, and Daredevil has to save her by bringing her to a device called a regenesis chamber. However, there's a bit of a problem. In order to operate the machine, Matt needs to press certain dials based on their colors. And since Matt can't exactly see the colors, he can't save her. So Moondragon uses her powers to restore Matt's eyesight so he can use the machine. And after saving her, the two head off to go and fight the villain Dark Messiah. But Daredevil realizes that his sight is actually making it hard for him to fight, so he asks Moondragon to take away his eyesight, and she does. Iron Fist becomes Daredevil. So Matt Murdock and Danny Rand have been good friends for years. And when the public found out that Matt is Daredevil, Danny helped his friend out and dressed up as Daredevil in order to convince the public that Matt wasn't really the devil of Hell's Kitchen. He pretended to be Daredevil for a few issues, fighting crime and other heroes. Yes, other heroes, because just as he started pretending to be Daredevil, Civil War began, and so he joined Captain America's side, though he would eventually be captured and sent to the Negative Zone prison, but would be freed and took part in the final battle. After Civil War, Danny would give the role of Daredevil back to Matt, and go back to being Iron Fist. Matt Murdock is the Kingpin. First appearing in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2, released in September of 2014, Matt Murdock of Earth-65, aka the Spider-Gwen universe, is basically, what if Matt Murdock was evil? His life began pretty much the same way as his 616 counterpart, becoming blind and gaining enhanced senses thanks to some chemicals. As his father is killed, Stick shows up and recruits Matt into his war against crime. But this doesn't last very long, as Stick is killed by the Hand, who then take in Matt and train him to be an assassin. Matt would rise up the ranks of the Hand and become an excellent assassin. Eventually, he decides to go back to the United States in order to get a law degree. Using his skills, he would impress Kingpin and work for him, becoming his chief advisor. After Kingpin was sent to jail, Matt was put in charge of his criminal empire, and it's here that he has a bit of a mental breakdown and attempts to Avengers Endgame himself. But then he sees Spider-Gwen, and just by looking at her, he decides to continue living. But instead of becoming a better person, he decides to make Spider-Gwen his successor, so he tries to get her to go bad by messing with her, and through this, he would eventually discover her true identity, and tried to convince her father to help him mold Gwen into his apprentice. But her father was obviously just like, no. What the hell? Shortly afterwards, Captain Stacy turned himself in to the police for helping Spider-Gwen. Taking advantage of this situation, Matt told Gwen that he would free her dad if she worked for him. She agreed and finally became his apprentice, but she doesn't really like doing the crimes that he orders her to commit. So he has the Venom symbiote placed on her. So Gwen goes through your standard Venom symbiote arc stuff. She becomes aggressive and tries to kill Matt, but spares him once she finds out that her dad is in a coma after the police failed to protect him from other inmates. Though, to be fair, Matt did order the Rhino to beat him into a coma, so he was at fault. She eventually finds out that he's responsible and once again tries to kill him, but once again spares him upon Matt claiming that he's won, and that she's become a worthy successor. Matt is then attacked by the Hand, who want to kill him because they're worried that his very public dealings with Gwen are going to expose the clan. So now Matt has pretty much no allies, which leads him to being defeated for good by Gwen. As for his powers, he has all of your standard Daredevil abilities, so all of his enhanced senses. His walking stick also has a katana inside of it, which is pretty cool. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in Into the Spider-Verse. Daredevil, Man Without Fear. Developed by 5000 Feet, Daredevil the Man Without Fear is a cancelled video game about Daredevil doing Daredevil stuff. Originally intended to be a low-budget, small-scale game, its budget was drastically increased after the announcement of the 2003 Daredevil film being in development. That being said, this wasn't going to be a tie-in to the film, it was just going to release around the same time to capitalize on the film. Originally intended to be an open-world game, disagreements between Sony and Marvel caused the game to become a linear third-person brawler. Ultimately, the game was cancelled after Marvel expressed disappointment with the project, and 5000 Feet had some pretty serious internal problems. The game would remain unplayable until October 2023, when a PlayStation 2 version of the game was uploaded online. While the game has some bugs and glitches, and some of the game's features aren't fully completed, the entire game is fully playable, except for the last 2 levels. The game's plot sees Kingpin being supposedly assassinated, resulting in a 3-way gang war between Silvermane, the Rose, and Hammerhead, and it's during this gang war that Foggy is kidnapped. So Matt sets out to rescue his friend, while also trying to stop the gang war. During the game, he would come face to face with not just the gang leaders, but also Elektra, who would both be a friend and a foe. Villains like Bullseye and the King of the Sewers would also be enemies in the game. The game would eventually lead to the reveal that Kingpin faked his death and was behind Foggy's kidnapping. ending with a boss fight against him. Finally, Black Widow, Turk, Josie, and Punisher were all planned to appear in the game, but aren't in the playable build available. Black Widow would give you access to bonus missions where you'd face off against characters like the Rose and Hammerhead, while the Punisher would be a boss fight, and Turk and Josie would just be minor characters you'd find in the game. Nuke. First appearing in Daredevil issue 232, released in March of 1986, Frank Simpson is a very interesting man with a very horrific life. He was born into a messed up family, as not only was his mother a heavy alcoholic, but also incredibly abusive. Young Frank would fall in love with his babysitter, and his babysitter was just like, "Hey little dude, if you love me, you should kill your mom." So Frank did. Frank would then get kidnapped, but not by the babysitter, but by Wolverine, who showed up, shot the babysitter, and kidnapped Frank for a government program called Project Homegrown. This was part of the Weapon Plus program, like Weapon X and stuff, one of the many attempts to create a super soldier like Steve Rogers. So Frank grew up in a government facility, being turned into a living weapon loyal to the United States. He would be shipped off to Vietnam, where he would be captured and tortured by Wolverine, who was pretending to be a Russian agent. He broke Frank's mind and carved an American flag into his face. Frank would then be allowed to escape and go on a rampage, slaughtering entire villages, believing them all to be Viet Cong. This was all part of the plan, and to finish off the program, Frank was turned into a cyborg and was forced to become addicted to special pills created for him. These pills included the white pills, which were to keep him chill between missions, the red pills for adrenaline, and blue pills to calm him down. Although it has been said that these pills may have just been placebos, so I don't know, maybe they don't do anything. Kingpin would then use his connections and hire Frank, now going by the name Nuke, as a mercenary of sorts to kill Daredevil. Problem with that, though, is that Frank didn't just try to kill Daredevil. He went on a complete rampage through Hell's Kitchen, catching the attention of the Avengers, who helped Daredevil defeat him. Frank would then be shot by the military, and secretly was taken away by them. For a while, Nuke would be a weapon the US would occasionally send out after their enemies. That changed when Norman Osborn was able to recruit Nuke into the Thunderbolts under the name Scourge. While working with the Thunderbolts, Nuke would battle a ton of people, like Black Widow, Songbird, Nick Fury, the Agents of Atlas, and the Mighty Avengers. He would eventually be taken out of the Thunderbolts and placed into government hands, though he would seemingly escape and go rogue, becoming a mercenary and popping up around the world killing people he believed were threats to the United States. As for his powers, Nuke has superhuman strength, reflexes, healing, and durability, thanks to his cybernetic enhancements. He's also got a second heart, which isn't really a power, but I couldn't figure out where to mention it. He's also always packing heat, carrying assault rifles, sniper rifles, grenade launchers, handguns, etc. His most iconic weapon is Betsy, a giant light machine gun that could fire incendiary missiles and artillery rounds. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Marvel superheroes What The and the MCU.
We'll be right back to Marvel's Avengers, Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
Secret Wars. What's Dr. Doom's mission? Secret Shield? Ah, Zap Captain America with my Doom Roller.
Dr. Doom, Doom Roller, Turbo Cycle, and Captain America each sold separately. Batteries not included.
Let's roll. Doom Roller, that Ferris wheel can't stop the turbo cycle. Change course, Doom Roller. Now, turbo cycle, you're doomed.
Doom Roller and Turbo Cycle vehicles from the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars collection, each sold separately.
And now back to Marvel's Avengers Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
Lady Bullseye. First appearing in Daredevil issue 111, released in September of 2008, Lady Bullseye has a pretty mysterious past. Her real name has never been revealed, though she has gone by the name Maki Matsumoto on occasion. What we do know about her past is that she's from Japan, and when she was young, she was forced into sex trafficking by the Yakuza. She'd be freed from this hell by Bullseye, who showed up to kill the Yakuza members for a job. This inspired her to become just like Bullseye, and she joined the Hand in an effort to gain the skills necessary to do so. She would show up in New York City years later on a job for the Hand. At night, she was a Hand assassin, but by day, she pretended to be a lawyer. Wanting the Hand to become as powerful as possible, and eventually wanting to become its leader, she attempted to convince a high-level member of the Hand, Hiroshi, to become its leader, but he refused. So she went with Plan B to make Kingpin the leader of the Hand. So she tracked down the Kingpin, who was trying to live a normal life, and kills his girlfriend and her kids in order to draw him back to the world of crime. And boy did it. Kingpin showed up in New York City and believed that Hiroshi was the one who called the hit, so he kills him and accepts the offer to lead the Hand. But before he could actually do anything as the leader of the Hand, Lady Bullseye's mentor, Itzo, and Daredevil show up and defeat them. Matt then decides to accept the offer to lead the Hand, and Lady Bullseye is ousted from the clan. So Kingpin and Lady Bullseye decide to team up to rebuild Fisk's criminal empire in order to take down the Hand. Though this doesn't last, as Lady Bullseye would seemingly grow bored of this and eventually venture off to go do her own stuff as a mercenary. She lived this mercenary life for a while, until eventually rejoining the Hand after the Punisher became the leader of it. But she did so only to try and kill Frank, as she believed that he was unworthy to lead. But after Frank kills her ally, Lord Deathstrike, she submits to his rule, and currently, that's where her story ends. As for her powers, she doesn't have any, but she's extremely good at throwing weapons, like knives and shurikens. She's also a master at sword combat, and can perfectly replicate somebody's voice. As for her appearances in media, she's appeared in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Marvel World of Heroes, and Hitmonkey. Original casting. Just like every other film or show ever made, some actors just don't make the cut when they auditioned for roles for Daredevil films or shows. That, or they declined a role offered to them. Here's a list of some actors who either auditioned for roles, were offered roles, or were considered for roles, but for whatever reason, just didn't end up getting the part. For Daredevil in the 2003 film, Colin Farrell, Guy Pearce, Matt Damon, Patrick Wilson, Edward Norton, and Vin Diesel were considered for the role. For Elektra in the 2003 film, Salma Hayek, Natalie Portman, Jessica Alba, Mia Maestro, Rona Mitra, and Jolene Blalock were considered for the role. For Foggy Nelson from the 2003 film, Donald Logue and Seth Rogen were considered for the role. For Bullseye from the 2003 film, Ben Affleck was considered for the role. For Foggy Nelson in the MCU, Charlie Cox was considered for the role. For Bullseye in the MCU, Jason Statham was considered for the role. And as for Stick, Sonny Chiba was considered for the role. Frogman. First appearing in Daredevil issue 10, released in August of 1965, Francois LeBlanc has practically no backstory. All we know about him is that he joined the group the Ani-Men, more on them later. After joining the team, they were sent by the villain the Organizer to go and frame Daredevil for a bank robbery. But Frogman was easily the weakest link of the team, as he was defeated by Daredevil. And in order to infiltrate the group, Matt actually took Frogman's costume and disguised himself as the web-toed villain in order to infiltrate the Ani-Men. And thanks to Frogman's costume, Matt was able to defeat them. Frogman would return a few times after this incident, but would never fight Daredevil again, instead battling the X-Men and Iron Man, though in these fights, he looked a little bit different. This is because he was working for the villain Count Nefaria, and he gave him a frog-like appearance, but instead of ending up like the second best My Hero Academia character, Frogman had his body transformed into a humanoid frog. He would be put out of his misery by the villain's Spy Master after only appearing in 6 issues. As for his powers, Frogman's original suit allowed him to have frog-like agility, which allowed him to jump long distances, and after the transformation, he could just do this normally. Roulette. In Daredevil issue 191, released in October of 1982, the story Roulette is told. This is probably one of the most well-known Daredevil stories out there, as not only is it incredibly well written, but it's also about Daredevil playing Russian roulette with a paralyzed Bullseye in a hospital. Well, it's mostly that. Daredevil shows up to Bullseye's hospital room and tells him about something that just happened to him. He'd recently met with a man named Hank Jurgens, who wanted to hire Matt to prove his innocence in court, claiming that he was being framed. But while meeting him, Matt notices that Hank's son, Chucky, is watching a tape of Daredevil and Bullseye fighting. Turns out, Chucky is obsessed with Daredevil, even pretending to be Daredevil at home and at school. Matt decides to meet with Chucky, which makes the kid pretty happy. But during this meeting, he notices that Chucky is a little bit too thrilled about the idea of beating people. Daredevil then follows Hank for evidence that would back up his claim, and discovers that he really is being framed, as Hank meets with the man who's trying to frame him. Hank pulls a gun on the man, so Daredevil steps in and beats him up. But what Matt doesn't know is that Chucky was watching the entire thing. And a few days later, Chucky, while at school, takes his dad's gun and shoots one of his bullies. And as the story ends, Matt reveals to Bullseye that he's worried that he might be a bad influence on the people who look up to him. He then reveals that the gun they'd been using to play Russian roulette with was empty. The Owl. First appearing in Daredevil issue 3, released in June of 1964, Leland Owsley is a former Wall Street financier turned crime lord. But he wasn't just a crime lord, he was a super-powered crime lord. He had this weird serum in his possession, and whenever he took the serum, he would gain the ability to fly, but only for short distances. This serum would eventually also give him some other owl-like powers. Because he has Owl in his name, and now had the ability to fly, he took up the identity of the Owl. His criminal dealings obviously led him to fighting Daredevil numerous times over the years. Even when he moved across the country to California, Daredevil was there to stop him. Eventually, Owl would develop a neurological illness that took away his ability to walk. So he began trying to figure out a way to cure himself, and in the meantime, he had a man build him an exoskeleton and a flying device so that he could still do his owl stuff. But the man who built the flying device had actually messed with it in order to kill the owl. and it nearly succeeded as he plummeted to the ground. He would survive, but had to have a pacemaker in order to live. Luckily for the Owl, he would wake up from the coma, and the Tinkerer would fix his exoskeleton. He would also somehow cure himself of this condition. After this health crisis, Owl decided to replace Kingpin as the top crime lord in New York City. However, his plans to do so didn't really work out. First, he tried to create an alliance with Doc Ock, but he refused and threw him off a building. So instead, he teamed up with Gladiator, Stilt-Man, and Copperhead to assassinate Kingpin. And maybe this plan would have worked, if not for the fact that Copperhead was also a demon who was trying to harvest all of their souls. Even after Kingpin got arrested and there was a power vacuum, he still failed, as Daredevil would defeat him. Though I should mention here, the only reason Kingpin was locked up was because of the Owl. Daredevil would soon join Owl in prison, as Matt had his identity revealed and was arrested for being a vigilante. Around this time, Foggy was seemingly killed, and when Owl taunted Matt about it, Matt nearly beat Owl to death. Owl would eventually escape prison and travel back to California to become the Kingpin of crime of San Francisco. However, this didn't end very well, as the villain, the Shroud, didn't really like him, and began to mess with his gang, though Owl would eventually convince Shroud to work with him in order to gain a piece of technology that would give him the power to transmit data directly into his mind. They were successful, and Owl gained these abilities, only for Shroud to then turn on Owl and use him as a human surveillance device, plugging him into TVs, phones, and other electronic devices so that he could find his ex-girlfriend. After this, Owl would be freed from this hell and return to doing crime, eventually taking part in a massive gang war in New York City that had to be stopped by Daredevil, Spider-Man, She-Hulk, and more. Should also mention here that he has a daughter named Jubila Pride, who is also a criminal and had her body enhanced with technology by the Owl, which allows her to fly. As for his powers, the serum he takes gives him the ability to fly for short periods of time. This serum also made his bones hollow, which is genuinely horrific. He's also got enhanced strength, stamina, hearing, and speed. He can also grow talons from his hands and feet, and after being exposed to that crazy piece of technology that I mentioned earlier, he can now transfer data directly into his brain. He's also got owl-shaped vehicles, robots, and bases, which is pretty funny. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in the MCU, Marvel Avengers Alliance, Spider-Man the Animated Series, and the Hyperscan game Marvel Heroes. Daredevil movie tie-in game. Released in February 2003, Daredevil for the Game Boy Advance is the only Daredevil video game ever released. Developed by Kryptonite Games, while advertised as a movie tie-in, it's not an adaptation of the film, though it does use the film's character designs. Instead, the game follows Daredevil fighting a gauntlet of characters like Bullseye, the Sewer King, Elektra, Echo, and Kirigi. He does this because Kingpin put a bounty on him, so all of these characters are here to collect. This obviously leads to Daredevil facing off against Kingpin, where it's revealed that Fisk had sent all of these bad guys to go fight Daredevil so that he could get rid of Fisk's competition. Even though Daredevil is able to defeat Kingpin, Fisk threatens to reveal his secret identity to the public if he's handed over to the police. So Matt is forced to let him go, and Fisk calls off the bounty. The game is 23 levels long and is a platformer. It seems to have gotten pretty average reviews from critics and players alike, and is really only notable for being the only Daredevil game to ever be released. Leapfrog. First appearing in Daredevil issue 25, released in December of 1966, Vincent Patilio is the second frog-themed supervillain Daredevil fought. Not much is known about Vincent's childhood, but when he became an adult, he spent most of his time inventing stuff for toy companies. But this wasn't enough for him. He wanted to create the next great invention, but no matter what he made, it just wasn't good enough. So instead of making inventions for companies, he began making inventions for himself, and created the leaping coils. These leaping coils allow people to jump extremely long distances like a frog. So he then decided to create a frog costume and began to do crime, becoming the Leapfrog. As Leapfrog, he would come into conflict with Daredevil multiple times. Probably the most iconic Leapfrog story is when he had Nelson and Murdock represent him in court after he claimed that he wasn't actually Leapfrog. This obviously didn't work. After fighting a bunch of different heroes over the years, like Iron Man, Falcon, and Valkyrie of all characters, he decided to call it quits to support his family. After his wife died of cancer, Vincent dedicated his life to creating toys and selling them to support his son. Inspired by his dad, Vincent's son, Eugene, created his own Leapfrog costume. This made Vincent really proud of him, but this pride turned to anger quite quickly, as Eugene wanted to become a superhero, not a villain. Though this didn't stop Eugene from continuing his career as a hero. Vincent would eventually die at the hands of a Moon Knight life model decoy after being thrown into Murder World by the villain Arcade. As for Leapfrog's powers, I basically went over them already. He didn't have any. His suit allowed him to jump really far thanks to the leaping coils. His suit also had a built-in exoskeleton which gave him enhanced strength. While he's never appeared in any media, his son has appeared in the MCU. Echo becomes Ronin. In the Hawkeye series, Echo has a hatred for Ronin, aka Hawkeye, as he killed her father after his location was given away by Fisk. While in the comics, Echo has a very different relationship with the Ronin identity. Yes, I said identity, as many different people have been Ronin, including Echo. In New Avengers issue 11, released in September of 2005, Echo took up the mantle of Ronin in order to join the New Avengers. Yes, Echo joined the Avengers before Daredevil. As Ronin, she would work with the New Avengers to battle the Hand, eventually leading to the capture of the villain Madame Hydra. She would then spend the next few months working in Japan, watching over the Hand. Because of this, she wasn't around for Civil War, but while her allies were fighting against each other in America, she was dead. Yeah, Echo was killed by a Skrull pretending to be Elektra, who was the leader of the Hand at the time. But before she died, she sent a package containing a duplicate of the Ronin armor that she wore, and information about what she was doing in Japan to Matt back in America. Skrull Elektra would then revive Echo and would try to brainwash her into becoming a Hand assassin, but luckily for Echo, she was saved by the New Avengers. And after this, Maya would retire from the Ronin identity, with Hawkeye now taking up the mantle. Funny enough, Hawkeye as Ronin was part of the team who saved Echo, so while Hawkeye as Ronin killed her dad in the MCU, Hawkeye as Ronin saved her life in the comics. The Rose. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 83, released in January of 1970, Richard Fisk is one of Fisk's two biological children. Fisk didn't really want him to be a criminal, so he sent him away to Switzerland to attend college. But while there, he'd find out about his father's criminal activities, and was pretty ashamed to be the son of the Kingpin, so he wandered off into the wilderness in order to fake his own death. When Richard returned to civilization, he went by the name the Schemer, and created his very own criminal organization. This organization was created with the sole purpose of taking down Kingpin's criminal empire. He quickly became a rival to Fisk, and upon revealing his identity to his father, Kingpin was so shocked he fell into a coma. Realizing how much he hurt his father, Richard decided to quit being the Schemer and find a way to wake his father up. This led to him joining Hydra so he could use Hydra's resources to heal him, and it worked. But upon learning that Hydra was actually run by Red Skull, Richard, Kingpin, Captain America, and Falcon teamed up to defeat him. But during this fight, Richard was fatally injured, leading to Fisk to place him in suspended animation and heal him using Spider-Man's life force. Upon waking up, Richard would leave crime behind, but would eventually return to it one day and joined his father's organization, going by the villain name The Rose. But this was all part of his new plan to take his father down, as he still believed that he was the better man. That all changed when he killed a cop, and believed that he was just as bad as his father, so he returned to Kingpin's empire for real, only to then decide that he actually still wanted to take down Kingpin. Yeah, he couldn't make up his mind. For his next scheme, he had his best friend Alfredo undergo plastic surgery to look like Richard in order to trick Kingpin into thinking that he wasn't up to his old tricks. But Alfredo decided to betray his friend and claimed that he really was the real Richard, and so the real Richard was forced out of the gang. This led to Richard to become a violent vigilante known as Blood Rose. This would lead to him being arrested and placed into witness protection. Years later, he would rejoin his daddy's organization, only to then be convinced to betray him again. His latest scheme actually ended up with him being killed by Vanessa, his own mother. Years later, he'd be revived by the Jackal, only to then die again 3 issues later without doing all that much. While in hell, Ghost Rider would approach him and ask him for help in overthrowing Mephisto, but Richard refused because, well, it's Mephisto. Years later, Mayor Fisk would use some magical tablets to revive Richard. This seemingly bought Richard's loyalty, as he takes back up the Rose identity to help his father hunt down vigilantes. Just kidding, while he did help his father, he was playing the long game. He was planning to betray him. This didn't work out, and as of right now, the Rose is still planning on taking out Kingpin. As for his powers, he doesn't have any, but he's a decent fighter and usually carries a gun. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in Spider-Man the Animated Series and Into the Spider-Verse. What if Elektra had lived? I would argue one of the most iconic deaths in all of comics is Elektra's original death in Daredevil issue 181, released in December of 1981. But what's funny about her death is that it didn't even take a year for Marvel writers to explore the idea of what if she didn't die. In fact, the writer who explored this idea was Frank Miller, the man who killed her off in the first place. In What If issue 35, released in July of 1982, we're introduced to a reality in which Bullseye was killed during his escape from prison. And with no Bullseye, that means Kingpin and Eric Slaughter have to send different assassins after her, and they all kinda suck. Elektra is able to defeat all of them, but is injured during the fight. Matt comes to her aid, and the two of them decide to leave New York City behind and go into hiding, never telling Foggy or anyone else in their lives about what they're doing. And they never find out where Matt and Elektra went off to, and the two live happily ever after, even though all of their loved ones are really concerned about them. Best part of the story is that the Watcher literally tells Matt all of this while he's at Elektra's grave. Dude's just like, "Hey man, I'm sorry the love of your life died, but did you know that there's a universe where you're happy and she lived? Pretty cool, right? Alright, well, I'll see ya. Definitely don't want to be ya." Deathstalker. First appearing in Daredevil issue 39, released in February of 1968, Philip Sterling doesn't really have much of a backstory. All we know is that he comes from wealth and decided to start committing crimes under the name The Exterminator. He was also a bit of a gadgets guy and created a ray gun called the T-Ray, or Time Displacer Ray, that could temporarily send someone to a void-like dimension for a few hours. He came into conflict with Daredevil very early into his career as the Exterminator. During their first fight, Daredevil would be hit with the T-Ray and sent into the void, but he would eventually escape and track Philip down again, this time defeating him and his henchmen. This battle actually convinced Matt to quit being Daredevil, and so he set off an explosion to fake his death. But what Matt didn't know is that this explosion sent Philip into the void dimension, and instead of escaping a few hours later, he was trapped in there for years. He would eventually learn how to travel back to Earth for limited periods of time, and continued to do crimes, now going by the name Deathstalker. He would try to figure out a way to escape the void permanently, but Daredevil would always be there to stop him. But it wasn't just Daredevil. Iron Man, Ghost Rider, and Doctor Strange also made sure that he stayed in the void. Growing tired of all of this, Deathstalker decided to have a final battle with Daredevil. Learning his real identity, he challenged Matt to a fight. And during this fight, Deathstalker would die, finally escaping the void dimension permanently. As for his powers, Deathstalker has the ability to teleport by using the void dimension. He also had gloves that sent out microwave radiation and would sometimes use a spray that caused hallucinations. Another Deathstalker was introduced in Villains for Hire issue 1, released in December of 2011. She was part of the team Villains for Hire, led by the Purple Man, aka Kilgrave, but she would be captured only after a few issues, and hasn't been seen since. As for her powers, she seemingly has all of Deathstalker's abilities. What if Daredevil killed Kingpin? In What If issue 2, released in April of 1989, Daredevil breaks his no-killing rule and straight up kills Kingpin. After discovering Matt's identity, Kingpin makes Matt's life a living hell by attacking his friends, destroying his career as a lawyer, and even blowing up his house. This made Matt snap, and he straight up walks up to Kingpin and shoots him in the head. This act of murder destroys Matt even further, as he becomes insanely depressed at what he's just done. So he turns himself into the police. But weirdly enough, he's not given a traditional punishment. Instead of being put in prison or killed, his punishment is to live, with the fact that he's betrayed everything that he stood for. Meanwhile, the Rose finds out about his father's murder, and instead of being happy about it, he's upset. Despite hating his father, he has an urge to avenge him, so he goes off to hunt down Matt Murdock. Meanwhile, Matt is not taking this life punishment very well, and begins to hallucinate. Punisher then shows up and tells Matt how hyped he is that he killed Kingpin. But Matt's not having this, and begs for Punisher to kill him. Punisher, realizing that Matt's having a mental breakdown, tries to get Matt some help, but he refuses and tries to run off. That's when Spider-Man shows up, and the two try and capture Matt so they can get him some help, but he escapes. He rushes over to the Rose's house and begs him for a punishment. Rose is about to execute him when suddenly Hobgoblin shows up with orders from Hammerhead to kill him. Matt and Rose work together to fight off the Goblin and his henchmen, and during the fight, Matt sacrifices his life to kill the Hobgoblin. Richard is shocked by Matt's death, but forgives him for killing Fisk. And in his honor, he decides to become the next Daredevil, with his friend Alfredo designing a Daredevil suit that allows Richard to have the same level of enhanced senses that Matt did. Machine Smith. First appearing in Daredevil issue 49, released in December of 1968, Samuel Saxon was your ordinary kid until one day he found a Doombot just chilling out in a subway tunnel. He took the machine home and studied it in and out. This led to him becoming fascinated with robots, and so spent the rest of his life dedicated to robotics. He'd eventually be hired by the Tinkerer, which would lead to him coming into conflict with Daredevil, as he would be ordered to send his robot, Plastoid, after him. This incident led to Saxon discovering Daredevil's secret identity, so he abducted Karen Page in order to lure Daredevil into a trap, only to then be defeated by Daredevil and Black Panther. Wanting revenge for having his plans foiled by Daredevil, he would take up the mantle of Mr. Fear, but this run as the fear-inducing nuisance was brief, as he would die during a fight with Daredevil. But this was far from the end of Saxon. Some of his robots collected his consciousness and placed it into a robotic body. Now an AI inside of a robot, Saxon started calling himself Machine Smith, and continued his career of building machines for criminals. This would lead to him coming into conflict with a bunch of different heroes, like Captain America, the New Warriors, and the Fantastic Four, and he worked alongside villains like Red Skull, Mother Night, and Crossbones. And he just kinda stopped being a Daredevil villain, now being an Avengers villain, even joining an incarnation of the Masters of Evil. Some of his schemes included trying to assassinate the President of the United States, wiretapping the Avengers mansion, and manipulating a man into recreating the Super Soldier Serum. After doing so much evil, you would think that he was irredeemable, but that's not the case. Well, kinda. At one point, he was convinced to help save Captain America by Sharon Carter. While she promised that he would be set free, what she didn't tell him is that she would infect him with a virus, destroying his memory banks, basically making him not evil anymore. And after this, Machine Smith took up a new life, even joining a Villains Anonymous support group and taking up a regular job working for Scott Lang, though he would eventually return to villainy. As for his powers, Machine Smith can transfer his consciousness between various robotic bodies, and he can also control multiple robots at once. He can also reformat pieces of technology, repair himself, and manipulate electronics all around him. He's also got laser eyes, infrared vision, the ability to create weapons, fire energy from his hands, and has superhuman strength, speed, and reflexes. He's also had a giant snake body before, which is pretty crazy. Shadowland. Releasing from September to December 2010 and written by Andy Diggle, Shadowland is a fairly controversial comic event centered around Daredevil and the street-level heroes of New York City, told in 5 main issues and a whole bunch of tie-ins like Shadowland Moon Knight, Shadowland Power Man, Shadowland Spider-Man, and Shadowland Daughters of the Dragon, The event begins with Daredevil returning to New York City after spending some time in Japan. You see, remember when I mentioned that Matt agreed to lead the Hand after stopping Lady Bullseye and Kingpin? Well, after that, he traveled to Japan in order to unite the Hand, but while there, Matt had his soul taken over by a demon known as Kralik, aka the Beast, thanks to the help of a sub-faction inside of the Hand, and so Daredevil becomes evil. Yup, it's one of those stories. After returning to New York City, Matt kills Bullseye and builds a Hand fortress called Shadowland. Most of the superhero community is pretty confused as to why Matt's doing all of this, and begin to grow concerned after the Hand raids Bullseye's funeral, causing a full-blown riot, almost resulting in the death of Ben Urich. Matt then offers the heroes of New York City a deal: join the Hand, or be treated as an enemy of the Hand. And obviously, most of the heroes refuse. But it's not just the heroes working to take the Hand down. Kingpin is also working to stop Matt, and even summons Ghost Rider to help him. Anyways, a whole bunch of fights happen between the heroes, the Hand, and the villains caught in the middle. The story ends with Elektra, who joined Matt as a double agent, working with Iron Fist and kinda Foggy Nelson to defeat him and exorcise Matt of the Beast, before he's able to revive Bullseye. This works, and Daredevil takes some time off in New Mexico to figure himself out, while New York City recovers from the chaos. Oh yeah, and Lady Bullseye ends up reviving Bullseye a little while later. The story received a bit of a mixed reception due to the fact that the story's pacing is a bit of a mess. There's also some story decisions that were controversial, and the tie-in issues were an extremely mixed bag of quality. While Shadowland will probably never be adapted in media, the Shadowland Daredevil costume does appear in the MCU, and an event inspired by Shadowland occurred in Marvel Future Fight. Mr. Fear. First appearing in Daredevil issue 6, released in December of 1965, Zoltan Drago is the first, but certainly not the last person to call himself Mr. Fear. He owned one of those creepy wax museums, and there he would try to create a potion to bring his wax models to life so that he could take over the world, but he was never able to do this, as he gave up on that dream once the demonic entity, the Dweller in Darkness, began to mess with his dreams, inspiring him to create a fear toxin, a toxin that could make people extremely paranoid and scared. Zoltan didn't really have much of a career as Mr. Fear. He would face off against Daredevil only once before being arrested, and then he was killed by Samuel Saxon for his costume and fear toxin. As for his powers, he had none. He just had a gun that fired pellets filled with the fear toxin. The next person to go by Mr. Fear, besides Samuel, was Lawrence Cranston. First appearing in Daredevil issue 88, released in March of 1972, Lawrence is the most recognizable Mr. Fear, as he has the most appearances. He was a rival to Matt while the two attended law school, but would always lose to him. Years later, he would witness Zoltan's death, and in his dying breath, he told Lawrence where his fear toxin equipment was. He would then gather up his equipment and decided to get revenge on Matt Murdock for beating him at school. So he followed Matt to San Francisco and attacked him, but failed. After this failure, he would go into hiding, becoming a teacher at a law school, and used this identity to fund his shenanigans as Mr. Fear. Probably the craziest thing he did was try and have Karen Page killed, but when the killer he sent failed, he killed the would-be murderer and framed Karen for his death. But this plan didn't work out in his favor. Eventually, he started giving criminals a drug that was basically just Psycho from the Fallout series. He even drugged Matt's wife, Mila, which led to her killing a man. This actually almost made Daredevil break his no-kill rule. Larry would then tell Matt that there wasn't a cure for the toxin. He'd then clear her name by explaining that he was the one responsible for her condition and was sent to prison while she was sent to a medical institution. Years later, Lawrence would then be chosen by Kingpin to be part of the Thunderbolts, but this wouldn't last long, and he would go back to doing crime by himself. As for his powers, he infused himself with the fear toxin, allowing him to induce fear in people without actually needing to use the toxin. Not only that, but he can also affect the moods of people around him using his pheromones, allowing him to basically brainwash people. He also uses a bunch of different blades, from swords to knives to even wrist blades. The next Mr. Fear was a man named Alan Fagan, first appearing in Marvel Team-Up issue 92, released in January of 1980. He's Lawrence's nephew, and after Lawrence was believed to be dead, he would be given the Mr. Fear equipment. Using this equipment, he took up his uncle's criminal mantle and battled Spider-Man a whole bunch. Yeah, he's not actually a Daredevil villain, so that's all I'm gonna say about him. The last Mr. Fear wasn't a Mr. at all. First appearing in Daredevil issue 314, released in March of 1993, Ariel Tremor was the daughter of Alan Fagan. The two didn't really have a great relationship, as Alan basically abandoned her, and his career as a villain made people judge her and her mother. So she decided to become a criminal in order to get revenge, hiring a chemist to extract the fear toxin from Alan's body. Yeah, Alan also infused himself with the fear toxin to get the same power as Lawrence. And after infusing it, Ariel became the villain Shock, Mistress of Fear. And she didn't really do all that much. She was quickly defeated by Daredevil and would later be killed by the Punisher. But not Frank Castle, a different Punisher that I'll talk about in the Punisher Iceberg. As for her powers, she had the same fear-inducing pheromone powers that Lawrence did, and she also had clawed hands. Magdalena Daredevil. Released in June 2008 and written by Phil Hester, Magdalena Daredevil is a one-shot comic crossover between Daredevil and the Top Crow Productions superhero, Magdalena. For those that don't know, she's the descendant of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. No, really. In this universe, Jesus got married and had children with Mary Magdalene, eventually leading to her birth. She also wields the spear that pierced Jesus' side during his crucifixion. Also, there's multiple different Magdalenas. It's basically a title carried down through generations. Anyways, as for the story itself, both heroes are trying to track down Michaela Robinson, as she's gone missing. Believing that Daredevil is the kidnapper, the two briefly fight before teaming up to find Robinson. She thought that Matt was the kidnapper because she knows what the kidnapper is, a demon. The two track down the demon to a church, where they come face to face with the demon who's disguised itself as a priest. He's covered in armor that he created using the souls of the children he's taken. But they're thankfully not dead. He just took the souls from their bodies. While Magdalena breaks the children free from their stone prisons, Matt is given her spear, and he kills the demon with it. And with that, the souls return to the kids, and the day is saved. Dare the Terminator. First appearing in Assassins issue 1, released in February of 1996, Slade Murdock is the combination between Daredevil and Deathstroke from DC, but also a woman, so maybe Ravager as well. This was all part of the Marvel vs. DC Amalgam Universe event, in which Marvel and DC characters were merged together to see what would happen. Anyways, Slade was trained how to fight from a young age, and when she became an adult, she began a career as an assassin, calling herself Dare. She eventually met the rival assassin Cat's Eye, aka Elektra Kyle, a hybrid between Elektra and Catwoman. When the two were ordered to kill each other, they realized that they were both hired by the same person, meaning that the dude was trying to get rid of both of them, so they teamed up, killed him, and became partners in crime. The pair would battle various people over the years, like Deadeye, a hybrid between Bullseye and Deadshot, Wired, a hybrid between Cable and Chase Lawler, and Thanoside, a hybrid between Thanos and Darkseid. Eventually, the crime lord Big Question, a hybrid between Kingpin and Riddler, would try and have the pair killed in order to frame Dr. Strange Fate, a hybrid between Doctor Strange, Charles Xavier, and Dr. Fate, for attempting to assassinate him. The pair were called to Big Question's base and were forced to fight through a gauntlet of enemies. Eventually, Slade would be killed in combat, and Cat's Eye was forced to finish the job alone. As for Dare's powers, she was given enhanced senses, strength, and reflexes by Big Question. Should have mentioned this earlier, but she was actually forced to have all of these abilities after Big Question had her experimented on, even surgically implanting devil horns into her forehead in order to make her look like a devil. These operations also left her blind. She also uses a variety of weapons, including many different swords and knives.
We'll be right back to Marvel's Avengers, Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
Secret Wars. Marvel's supervillains are coming. Marvel's supervillains and superheroes figures, each sold separately. Here, Doctor Doom and the Doom Platoon, Magneto, Dr. Octopus. There, Captain America and the Champions of Freedom, Spider-Man and Wolverine. Secret Wars. The secret's out.
And now back to Marvel's Avengers, Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
Cancelled Fox reboot film. After Daredevil 2 was cancelled, Fox took a break from Daredevil for a bit until February of 2010, when it was announced that 20th Century Fox was beginning development on a brand new live-action Daredevil film written by David Scarpa, unconnected with the Ben Affleck film duology. It was then announced in March of 2011 that David Slade would be directing the film, and Brad Caleb Kane was going to write the film. Yeah, I guess David Scarpa got fired. This film may have actually happened if not for David Slade, who dropped out of the film due to having prior obligations. Presumably the show Hannibal, as David Slade was directing 3 of the first season's episodes, and 2 of the second season's episodes around this time. Because David Slade left, Fox quickly tried to find a replacement director, as if they didn't have the film filming by October 10th, 2012, the rights to Daredevil, Elektra, and all of the other Daredevil-related characters would go back to Marvel. And they never found a director, so the rights to Daredevil went back to Marvel. As for what this reboot was going to look like, we know literally nothing about its plot. There is a piece of art that people claim is concept art for the film, but I can't find any confirmation about that. Mysterio tricks Karen into thinking that she has AIDS. In Daredevil issue 2, released in October of 1998, it's revealed that Karen Page has been diagnosed with AIDS. Except, not really. It was later revealed a few issues later that the doctor who confirmed that she was HIV positive was in fact Mysterio in disguise. This was all part of Mysterio's latest scheme to take down Daredevil, as he manipulated Karen and framed Foggy for murder in order to make Matt go crazy and kill him. The worst part is, Karen never found out that she was being lied to, as she was killed by Bullseye before this was revealed, and shortly after Mysterio explains this all to Matt, he Avengers Endgames himself. Kirigi was supposed to be in the Netflix series. Originally, the character Kirigi, first appearing in Daredevil issue 171, released in May of 1981, was supposed to appear in the Netflix Daredevil series. For those that don't know, in the comics, Kirigi is a silent, nearly immortal hand assassin. During development of Season 1, the idea of introducing him in Episode 9 of the series was brought up. He would have faced off against Daredevil in that episode instead of Nobu. It's unknown why they decided to scrap him, but it seems that elements of the character were incorporated into Nobu. Man-Bull. First appearing in Daredevil issue 78, released in July of 1971, William Torrens was your average criminal and was working for a man named Mr. Klein, aka that robot assassin from an alternate future that I briefly mentioned earlier. He was sent on a mission to kidnap people in order to get subjects for Mr. Klein's experiments. However, after Daredevil prevented him from actually kidnapping anyone, William was forced to undergo the experiments and became the Man-Bull monster known as, Man-Bull. Luckily for him, this transformation wasn't permanent. He'd then be defeated by Daredevil and sent to jail, where he would transform into Man-Bull once again, in order to escape the prison, thanks to the experimental serum that turned him into the Man-Bull being smuggled into jail, and this second dosage was actually permanent. As the Man-Bull, he would become the henchman to various villains over the years. Some of the other things he did included killing the Greek superhero John Ajax, battling the Hulk while in a more feral form, being hunted by Kraven the Hunter, and joining the Thunderbolts. He's just kind of your standard brute henchman. As for his powers, he's got super strength and stamina. He's also got 2 large horns, and due to his mutation, he sometimes transforms into a more powerful and more feral version of himself. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in the MCU. Daredevil becomes Captain Universe. In Captain Universe, Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, released in November of 2005, Matt briefly becomes the superhero Captain Universe. Captain Universe is the title of whoever the Enigma Force, aka the Unipower, bonds to. This is a cosmic being that maintains the universe, and after bonding with numerous people over the years, it eventually began to lose some of its power, and in order to regain its power, it decided to bond itself to various superheroes like Hulk, Invisible Woman, X-23, and Daredevil in order to replicate their powers. When the Unipower bonded to Matt, he was in the middle of a fight against some AIM agents. At first, Matt was given a sensory overload, but after some meditation, he was able to get back to normal. Oh, and the AIM agents he was fighting just bailed while he was meditating. Working with the Uniforce, Matt tracks down the AIM agents and attacks them, but during the fight, Matt tells the Uniforce to leave him, as its powers were actually harming Matt's ability to fight. This is because when the Unipower bonded to Matt, it gave him his eyesight back, and this was impacting his powers. So now that the Unipower is gone, and Matt has his full range of enhanced senses back, he's able to defeat the bad guys. Oliver Stone's Elektra Assassin film. Elektra Assassin is an 8-issue miniseries released from August 1986 to March of 1987. Written by Frank Miller, it's easily one of the most well-known Elektra stories. And because of this, it was prime material for adapting into a film. So a live-action film adaptation of the story was put into development with New Line Cinema in the early 1990s. Frank Miller was even brought on board to write the script for the film, though he'd be taken off of the project and was replaced with Jim McBride and L.M. Kit Carson. Oliver Stone later signed on to direct the film, and it seemed like it was going to happen, but it didn't. It's unknown why the film never happened. Some say it was because 20th Century Fox bought the film rights to Daredevil and Elektra, but that happened in 1997, years after the film was in development. As for what the film would have looked like, Stone wanted Gabrielle Reese to play Elektra in the film. The only other thing we know about the film is that it came out. Well, okay, it didn't actually come out. Let me explain. There's been some rumors that the script written for Elektra Assassin was rewritten into the script for the 1994 film Natural Born Killers. However, there's not a lot of evidence for this claim. Bullet. First appearing in Daredevil issue 250, released in September of 1987, Buck Cashman was one of the most respected CIA agents in the Marvel Universe, and because of this, he did jobs for the government that other agents would be opposed to, and this is how he came into conflict with Daredevil. Using his connections with the government, Kingpin had Buck, codenamed Bullet, work for him. During this job, he encountered a bit of a problem in the form of Matt Murdock. He was beating up a dude that he was supposed to arrest himself. Matt allowed Bullet to arrest him, but found that there was something suspicious about him, and later confronted him after Bullet killed a man as part of the job assigned to him by Kingpin. Bullet was arrested, but thanks to his connections, he was released, and all charges were dropped. He would fight Daredevil a few more times after this, but only because he was hired to. That, and his son was being threatened by the villain Typhoid Mary. It was around this time that he left the CIA and became a full-time mercenary, battling characters like Captain America, Bullseye, Luke Cage, and the X-Force. Eventually, he retired from mercenary work and decided to live in a tiny little cabin with his dog. They chilled for a while until one day his dog became infected with the symbiote Phage. Phage would then infect Bullet and use him as his host. Now working for Carnage, he would battle Agents Anti-Venom and Andy Benton, who had bonded to the symbiote Silence. He would lose this fight and be freed from Phage, though he would still be sent to jail, only to be bailed out by Daredevil, who wanted him to join the group The Fist. More on them later. He joined them, but would eventually leave and go back to his life as a mercenary. As for his abilities, Bullet has superhuman levels of speed, healing, strength, and stamina. Although nobody knows where he got these abilities from. Is he a mutant? An inhuman? Did he get them from an experiment? Does he have cybernetic implants? Nobody knows. Also, when bonded to Phage, he of course had all of your standard symbiote abilities, but Buck wasn't in control of the symbiote, so I guess he actually didn't. He was just kind of along for the ride. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in the MCU. Daredevil, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In What If, issue 28, released in May of 1981, we're introduced to a reality in which Matt Murdock didn't become a superhero, but instead an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. His life was mostly the same until the day he was blinded by some chemicals. In this reality, Tony Stark was nearby, and he took Matt to a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier instead of a hospital. There, they discovered Matt's new powers, and both Tony and Nick Fury agreed that Matt could become the best S.H.I.E.L.D. agent ever. But while Matt became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Matt's father was captured by a life model decoy of Matt sent by Hydra. While S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't know what exactly happened to his father, they figure that he's been kidnapped, so they refuse to tell Matt anything regarding his daddy, out of fear that he would go off looking for him. This doesn't work though, as Matt can sense Fury's heartbeats, so he can tell that he's lying, so he sets out to go find his father with the help of a woman named Dr. Frost, a Hydra secret agent. Luckily, her plan to bring Matt to Hydra fails, and S.H.I.E.L.D. stops them. Fury then tells Matt about how Hydra has his father, and Matt is sent to their secret underwater lair to save him. And so, Matt and Fury lead an assault on the base, and save Mr. Murdock. Upon defeating all of the Hydra agents, Matt announces his brand new S.H.I.E.L.D. codename, Daredevil. Cancelled 1990s animated series. In 1999, Marvel and Fox partnered together once again to create a Daredevil animated series rumored to share continuity with the animated Marvel Universe, which already featured 2 Daredevil appearances, one in Spider-Man the Animated Series, and the other one in Fantastic Four the Animated Series. Rumors over the years claim that the show was cancelled due to Daredevil being too dark of a character for an animated series aimed at kids. But at least from what I've seen, there isn't any evidence for these claims. Instead, the series was primarily cancelled due to the 2003 film, because while the film was released in 2003, the film was in various stages of development since 1997, and in 1999, negotiations around the film between Marvel and Fox fell through, and Columbia Pictures took up the film, only for this film to get cancelled and the rights to be given back to Fox. Presumably, Fox cancelled the cartoon after Columbia Pictures grabbed the film rights, either out of spite towards Marvel or not wanting to produce a cartoon that could potentially help market a rival film studio's movie. Well, that's at least one theory. Another theory as to why it was cancelled was that Marvel wanted the cartoon to be released after the film, and since the film didn't happen until 2003, both companies lost interest in the project. We know next to nothing about what the show would have been about. All we know is that art created for the show's pitch included characters like Kingpin, Elektra, Namor, and Punisher. Bushwhacker. First appearing in Daredevil issue 248, released in July of 1987, Carl Burbank is a former priest turned CIA agent who went by the name Bushwhacker. While working for the CIA, they gave him a cybernetic arm that enhanced his mutant abilities. Yup, Carl's a mutant, but he didn't have any love for mutants, as after quitting the CIA, he would become an assassin specialized in killing mutants. This led him into conflict with Daredevil and Wolverine. Wolverine and Bushwhacker would face off in New York City, and Daredevil would step in to prevent Wolverine from killing Carl. But this only allowed Bushwhacker to escape and kill more people, leading to Daredevil and Wolverine to work together to stop his rampage. Afterwards, he seemingly stopped his mutant hunting ways, and just became a plain old mercenary, working for anyone who paid him. And one of his most reoccurring clients was Kingpin, who had him take on various characters, like Daredevil and Punisher, but it wasn't just those heroes he fought against during his career as a merc with an arm. He also fought against Elektra, Two-Gun Kid, Nomad, and an alternate universe version of Deathlock. Other bad guys he would work for included Typhoid Mary, the Hood, and the Assassin's Guild. After doing dozens of jobs over the years, Carl was eventually killed by his former client, Kingpin, but he would then be resurrected via unknown methods. Bushwhacker would eventually be hired by the US government, who told him to monitor the Hulk, and if he got out of control, to kill him. This went as well as you would think, and Hulk would end up killing Bushwhacker after a few run-ins. But again, Bushwhacker somehow returned to life, and again, it was never explained how. As for his powers, his mutant ability allows him to transform his arms into various guns, including pistols, submachine guns, sniper rifles, and shotguns. And these guns produce their own ammunition, so he never runs out. He's also got superhuman strength and healing. As for his appearances in media, he's appeared in the 1993 Punisher video game, Punisher No Mercy, and the 2005 Punisher video game. Echo gains the Phoenix Force. During the Enter the Phoenix storyline, the Phoenix Force showed up on Earth and was like, "I'm gonna host a tournament to see who's worthy to be my host." So it gave a bunch of heroes from around the globe a bit of its power, and had them fight each other, and whoever was the last one remaining would become its new host. At least, that was the idea. Echo was chosen as one of the potential hosts, and battled Namor in the ocean. So, Namor won, and left her for dead. Normally, this would kick Maya out of the tournament, but the Phoenix Force was actually drawn to her due to her use of its power during the fight. So the Phoenix Force chose Maya to be its new host, and the contest was over. And for the next 2 years in Marvel Comics, Echo was the Phoenix, and worked alongside the Avengers, battling some pretty powerful threats, like the Council of Red and the Multiversal Masters of Evil. She would lose her Phoenix powers after using them up to help defend the multiverse from the leader of the Multiversal Masters of Evil, Doom Supreme. And after this adventure, she would leave the Avengers. While this storyline has never been adapted, her Phoenix form appears in Marvel Future Fight, and during this storyline, she meets several of her ancestors. This story may have been the inspiration for the ancestor flashback stuff in the Echo series. Blind Spot. First appearing in All New, All Different .1, released in October of 2015, Samuel Chung was born in China. There, he became a master acrobatic at a young age. But while he was studying jumps, flips, and kicks, he was also studying science and engineering. He was so skilled at this that by age 12, he had created a design for an invisibility suit. He and his mom would then illegally immigrate to the United States, where Samuel would work as a janitor at a college. While working overnights, he would use the school's labs to help him finally create his invisibility suit that he had designed years ago. At first he was like, I should file a patent for this and become rich. But then he remembered that he was smuggled into the United States while he was a kid, so he's technically an illegal immigrant. So instead of risking people discovering that he's an illegal immigrant, he decided to put his acrobatic skills and his invisibility suit to use as a superhero known as Blind Spot. Early into his career, he would run into Daredevil, who would begin mentoring him in how to be a vigilante. As Blind Spot, he would go on various fun and wacky adventures, like trying to save his mom from a cult, getting captured by Muse and having his eyes gouged out, getting his arm broken by Elektra, and being tormented by the Beast multiple different times. Yeah, Blind Spot's career has been pretty rough. He did get a new pair of eyes, though, so he can see again. As for his powers, he doesn't have any. Well, kinda, I'll get to it. Instead, he relies on his masterful acrobatic skills, a bow staff, and his invisibility suit to fight crime, although his suit has a time limit as it runs off of batteries. Also, his new eyes were given to him by the Hand, and they make him sensitive to demonic energy, so he can technically sense demons, which I guess is a power. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in the MCU. Daredevil She. Releasing from December of 1996 to February of 1997, Daredevil She is a two-part crossover comic between Daredevil and the Crusade Comics anti-hero She, aka Anna Ishikawa. Born to a Japanese warrior and a Catholic missionary, Anna was raised Catholic in Japan. As a kid, she witnessed her dad and brother being killed by the Yakuza, which led to her being sent away to live with her grandfather, where he taught her in the ways of the Sohei. Using her skills, she became the world's most deadly assassin and went by the name She, the kanji for death. As for the crossover, the story takes place during Christmas time and begins with Daredevil battling several Makoto assassins, remnants of the Hand. He then takes part in a case defending Dr. Stephen Timmons, as Peter DeNice, Anna's boyfriend and a former police detective, is filing a civil suit against him, claiming that Timmons tried to have him killed. In order to help Peter, Anna goes to find some evidence of this at Simmons' mansion, becomes face-to-face with Daredevil, and the two fight. The fight is cut short when security attacks both of them, causing the two to flee. Because she wasn't able to find the evidence, he loses the case, something that Matt isn't actually happy with, as he realizes that Peter was telling the truth. Meanwhile, Anna decides to work with the Makoto in order to heal Peter of his injuries caused by the attempt on his life. She's then possessed by the demon Makoto Oni. Daredevil and She face off again, but this fight doesn't last very long as She breaks free of the demon's control. But in response to this, the amulet placed around her neck that caused this possession begins to choke her to death. Luckily, Daredevil is able to save her life. Anna then discovers that the Makoto did in fact heal Peter, so the two go and celebrate New Year's together, but this celebration is cut short when Anna is once again possessed by the demon and she knocks out Daredevil. The two are then captured by the Makoto and are about to be sacrificed in order to let the demon fully possess She. Daredevil breaks free and tries to save her, but is unable to. Instead, Anna is freed by the power of prayer and tries to convince the Makoto Oni to let go of his evil ways. She fails, but this defeats the demon. She survives the encounter, and her and Daredevil go their separate ways. Daredevil is given Heimdall's powers. During the War of the Realms event, Daredevil receives a crazy power boost, as he's transformed into the God Without Fear by Heimdall. In order to give Daredevil a boost in the fight against Malekith's forces, he gave Matt his sword, Hofund, and this gave him Heimdall's powers. This allowed Matt not only to see, but to see and sense everything happening in the universe all at once. This also gave him a connection to Hofund, which gave him information on all of his opponents and how to defeat each and every one of them. He was also given flashes of knowledge that would tell him the best way to approach different objectives. This also gave Matt even more powers, like superhuman levels of strength and speed. He didn't have these powers for long, though, as he gave the sword back by the end of the event. But when he did have the powers, he made pretty good use of them. Probably the craziest thing he did with them was fight Kingpin. Yes, Kingpin fought in the War of the Realms event, but on the side of the Dark Elves, as he believed that the war was lost, and he also wanted to kill Daredevil. So he was given a magic hammer and some magic enhancements from the Dark Elves. The two fought, but Fisk would eventually turn on the Dark Elves in order to boost his re-election campaign. Cancelled 80s live-action spin-off. There were two different live-action Daredevil shows in development during the 1980s. The more well-known series was intended to be a sequel series, or spin-off, to the television film The Trial of the Incredible Hulk. For those that don't know, this was one of the 3 sequel films created for the Incredible Hulk live-action TV series, and this film featured 3 different Daredevil characters: Kingpin, Turk, who's white for some reason, and of course Daredevil himself, played by Rex Smith. They were put into the film as a backdoor pilot of sorts, meaning that Daredevil was going to get his own live-action series spinning off from the film. However, despite the film getting extremely high ratings, this spin-off series never came to be, and unfortunately, we don't know why. Daredevil: End of Days. Releasing from October 2012 to June 2013, and written by Brian Michael Bendis and David W. Mack, Daredevil: End of Days is an 8-issue miniseries that tells a hypothetical final Daredevil story. The story begins with Daredevil killing Kingpin. This causes the police to turn on Matt, and Daredevil disappears for years, only to return one night to fight Bullseye, but he doesn't win the fight with Bullseye and is killed, his final word being Mapone. This leads to Ben Urich to begin an investigation into what Matt was talking about. He begins his investigation by trying to interview Daredevil's friends and foes, like Punisher, Turk, Black Widow, Bushwhacker, Typhoid Mary, Echo, Elektra, the Owl, and Kilgrave. Most of his friends have moved on, with Echo now being a college professor, Elektra raising her and Matt's sons, and Punisher being locked up in prison, at least until he escapes. Punisher then kills Owl and Kilgrave, and then threatens Timothy Lang. Oh right, Timothy. Timothy is from the main Marvel universe, but he's an extremely minor character, and is the adopted son of Ben Urich. In this universe, he was trained by Matt to become his successor. This leads to Tim becoming the new Daredevil, and he saves his father from dying at the hands of bullets, but fails to save his dad when he gets targeted by the Hand. The story ends with Tim discovering what Mapone is. She's the daughter of Matt Murdock and Black Widow, who, by the way, is dead. Not only is she the daughter of these two heroes, but she's also the reincarnation of Stick, who Matt told Tim years ago would train him.
We'll be right back to Marvel's Avengers: Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
Now that we've got teams, may the best side win.
Wait, we get Juggernaut.
You can't have Juggernaut, you've got Wolverine.
So you got Spider-Man. Juggernaut's on our side.
Well, you can have Hulk.
Like Hulk's gonna follow orders.
Juggernaut, get back here.
Oh, man.
Pre-order Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 from GameStop for the exclusive code to unlock the Juggernaut.
And now back to Marvel's Avengers: Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
The Jester. First appearing in Daredevil issue 42, released in May of 1968, Jonathan Powers was a guy who really wanted to make it big in the world of acting, and he finally got his chance, taking part in a pretty big musical. But he was so bad that everyone, from the audience to the critics to even his fellow actors, thought he was trash. So he was fired and practically blacklisted from the industry. The only job he was able to get in acting was on children's TV shows. This was the final straw, and he decided to become a supervillain called the Jester. After getting some goofy gizmos made for him by the Tinkerer, he began his criminal career pretty well, as he was hired by a politician to threaten somebody. But of course, Daredevil was there to stop him. The Jester would battle Daredevil a few more times after this. His most notable battle against the Man Without Fear was when he tried to make everyone in New York City distrust the media by sending out fake news stories, like how the Vietnam War wasn't real and that John F. Kennedy was still alive. He also convinced people that President Gerald Ford said that the NYPD was filled with criminals. After this, Jester would occasionally pop up to trouble the heroes of New York City, like Spider-Man and Moon Knight, before deciding to retire. But this didn't stop him from being arrested, as one day he was arrested and charged with thinking about returning to doing crime. Yes, he was being charged with a literal thought crime. He was then thrown in prison and killed. But that wasn't the end of the Jester, as he somehow returned to life and returned to doing crime. As for his powers, he has none, though he uses a variety of toys modified to be weapons, such as explosive rubber balls, popcorn that releases tear gas, toy robots with laser guns, a gun disguised as a fake hand, and yo-yos with steel cables. As for his appearances in media, he's only ever appeared in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Daredevil and the Black Widow. In 1975, Angela Bowie bought the TV rights to Daredevil and Black Widow from Stan Lee. She then had photographer Terry O'Neill take photos of her in a Black Widow costume, and actor Ben Carruthers in a Daredevil costume. She then went around pitching the show using these photographs. However, the project went nowhere, as it was deemed too expensive and difficult to film. Not really much else for me to say, honestly. She purchased the TV rights for a year, cosplayed, and then failed to sell a show based on said cosplay. Bullseye owned Dragon Fang. In the aftermath of the War of the Realms event, a ton of Asgardian weapons were left behind all across New York City. Asgardian soldiers and the NYPD were able to retrieve most of them, but there were still a few that slipped between the cracks and were stolen by people. Unfortunately, one of these weapons was Dragon Fang, a sword created from the tusk of an extra-dimensional dragon, and was used by numerous Asgardian warriors, like Lady Sif and Valkyrie. And even more unfortunately, the person who took Dragon Fang was Bullseye, probably the worst person to have access to such a powerful weapon. He only stole the sword because he was hired to kill Jane Foster, who had become the new Valkyrie after the previous Valkyrie died during the War of the Realms event. Using the blade, he was able to kill Heimdall and battled Jane for a bit. Should also mention here that when you use the sword, you also get a magic flying horse. So, yeah, Bullseye also had a magic flying horse during this encounter. Instead of taking back the sword, Jane decided to destroy the supposedly indestructible blade to make sure that Bullseye can't use it and taint its legacy. Bullseye was then arrested. Daredevil and Lightning the Superdog. After the success of the cartoon series Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Marvel began work on other potential superhero cartoons, and one of them was called Daredevil and Lightning the Superdog. The cartoon was being planned to air on ABC, and would be about Matt Murdock and his seeing eye dog becoming the superheroes Daredevil and Lightning the Superdog. Though, while called a Superdog, Lightning wouldn't actually have any powers, and instead would be more like Lassie, just a dog who helps out. The show had a pilot written and an advertisement released in Comics Feature Issue 33, released in January of 1985. The series was being headed by Mark Evanier, but the show was cancelled after a Marvel agent said something that caused an executive at ABC to scrap the show. To this day, we have no idea what this agent said, and the pilot's script has never been released, so we don't really know too much else about this cartoon. What if Daredevil worked under Doctor Strange? In What If issue 83, released in January of 1996, we're introduced to a reality where instead of becoming a sorcerer, Stephen Strange went to Stick for guidance and was trained by him to become a martial artist. And after becoming a martial artist, he became a teacher and taught Matt Murdock and Elektra. He was actually the one who recruited Matt into martial arts, not Stick. Although, I guess technically it still was Stick, as he was the one who ordered Strange to rescue Matt, but whatever. In this reality, Matt never got a handle on his rage, and it quickly consumed him. Using his talents, he became one of the Hand's most powerful warriors. Like in the main Marvel universe, Matt and Elektra fell in love, but this time around, it's Daredevil who's trying to turn Elektra into a Hand assassin. Daredevil leads the Hand in a war against Strange, and during a Hand attack on Strange's home, Matt and Strange duke it out, with Matt coming out on top. Strange is only saved when a Hand soldier attempts to kill Elektra, which causes Daredevil to turn on the Hand soldiers. He and Elektra work together to defeat the assassins, and in the aftermath of the fight, Matt and Strange make up. Daredevil and Elektra then decide to leave this war with the Hand behind, and presumably become superheroes. Novels. While Marvel and DC characters are mostly known for their appearances in movies, TV shows, video games, animated shows, and comics, that doesn't mean that they don't occasionally show up in the world of novels. Daredevil has been the star of 4 different novels over the years. The first being Daredevil, Predator's Smile, released in April of 1996. Then there's Daredevil the Cutting Edge, released in June of 1999, which features Daredevil battling an original villain named Cutter, who's immune to Daredevil's senses. There is a comic character with the name Cutter who's only ever appeared in Daredevil issue 161, released in August of 1979, but I highly doubt they're the same character. Then there's Daredevil the Man Without Fear, released in July of 2016, which is an adaptation of the comic miniseries of the same name. And finally, there's the 2003 film novelization. The 2005 Elektra film also received a novelization. The Annie-Men. First appearing in Daredevil issue 10, released in August of 1965, the Annie-Men is a team of animal-themed dorks brought together by the villain, the Organizer. As I mentioned earlier, Frogman was part of the team, but he was certainly not the only member, because, well, it's a team. There's multiple members. Anyways, there's Ape Man, Birdman, and Catman. These 4 were the original Annie-Men, and would give Daredevil trouble every once in a while. They were basically just dudes in animal-themed costumes that gave them abilities matching the animals that they were dressed up as. So Birdman could fly, Ape Man was strong, and Catman had night vision. After a brief run as the Unholy Three, because Frogman bailed from the team for a bit, Frogman rejoined the team alongside a new member, Dragonfly, and they would all get animalistic upgrades, making them look more like the animals that they were named after. Though this mutation wouldn't last, and after some fights with the X-Men, they would revert back to their human forms. The 4 original members would then all die due to a bomb set off by Spymaster. Dragonfly would go solo for a bit, before joining various different groups over the years, like the Masters of Evil, Squadron Supreme, and the Femizons. The Animen's legacy continued with another Ape-Man, another Birdman, and another Catman. This new version of the team battled Daredevil as well, but nearly all of them were killed by Deathstalker. The second Birdman was the only survivor, until he was later killed by the villain Scourge. But he did get resurrected by the Hood, so he's all good. These guys were just normal dudes in animal-themed costumes with animal-themed gadgets. The next run of Animen consisted of Pigman, Rabbit Woman, Giraffe Man, and Great Horned Owl. These guys were basically just furries, because I guess the world needed another fur-bait rabbit character. These guys only appeared in a single issue, and were all defeated by the Avengers. The final incarnation of the Animen consisted of another Ape-Man, another Catman, and another Frogman. They showed up a few times, and didn't really do all that much. As you can see, the Animen is basically just a fodder background bad guy team. Kingpin legally couldn't be in Spectacular Spider-Man. While Kingpin started out as a Spider-Man villain, and still occasionally is, he's mostly known as a Daredevil villain. This connection to Daredevil prevented Kingpin from appearing in arguably the most critically acclaimed animated Spider-Man series, Spectacular Spider-Man. Around the mid-2000s, it was decided that Kingpin couldn't be in any more Spider-Man shows due to his connection with Daredevil, as Fox owned the rights to Daredevil. Maybe they were okay with playing ball before, which is why he was in Spider-Man the New Animated Series, but I guess they changed their minds. So Tombstone was put into the series instead of Kingpin. The Matador. First appearing in Daredevil issue 5, released in October of 1964, Manuel Eleganto was a bullfighter from Spain, and he wasn't exactly beloved. While he was popular for a time, he became infamous for his cruelty towards the bulls, which really ticked people off. It got to the point where people started rooting for the bull to kill him, and one day a bull nearly did kill him while he was distracted by the crowd. This caused him to quit being a bullfighter and become a supervillain purely out of spite for people. And so he battled Daredevil one day while trying to steal some money. Daredevil would defeat him, and he was arrested. He would pop up occasionally after this, usually robbing places or getting people to rob for him. He would eventually retire from doing crime, and decided to live a normal life. That was until he was one day brainwashed into fighting Daredevil, but after that, he went back to his normal life. As for his powers, he had none. As for his gadgets, he usually carried a sword with him, along with a whip. He also had a cape that he would use to blind people. Another Matador would first appear in Daredevil issue 89, released in September 2006. There's basically nothing known about this guy outside of the fact that his name is Juan, and he was a Matador who was hired by Vanessa in an effort to take down Daredevil. The two would fight, and Juan would lose. And outside of a very brief return in San Francisco, he hasn't shown up again. Mole Man steals Daredevil's dead dad. In Daredevil issue 9, released in February of 2012, Daredevil comes face to face with one of the oldest Marvel villains, Mole Man. The two face off after Mole Man begins to do some grave robbing, and one of the graves that he robs is Jack Murdock, Matt's dead dad. So Daredevil follows Mole Man's underground tunnels, tracking the freak down while battling mole people. He eventually finds Hans Mole Man, and they fight, but he loses the fight after Mole Man zaps him with electricity. Matt's then thrown down into a pit. and this pit is actually the home to a giant monster. Daredevil's nearly eaten by the monster, but luckily is able to escape. Matt then confronts Mole Man about why he's grave robbing, and Mole Man responds saying that he just wanted to be with his dead friend. The two fight some more, and Daredevil comes out the victor. By this point, nearly all of the bodies stolen by Mole Man have been destroyed by the Mole People. So instead of taking back his father's destroyed remains, he takes Mole Man's dead friend. She's reburied, and the day is kinda saved, I guess. Stunt Master. First appearing in Daredevil issue 58, released in September of 1969, George Smith, aka the Stunt Master, is basically just a guy who drives a motorcycle. His first interaction with Daredevil was when he was hired to kill him, and using his motorcycle, he certainly tried. He literally just kept trying to hit Daredevil with his motorcycle. After this failed, he would be arrested. When he got out of jail, he decided to quit trying to kill people with his motorcycle. While working a normal job, he found a group of dudes planning a robbery. He tried to stop them, but was threatened into helping them. This led to him fighting Daredevil again, and Daredevil would convince him to help him stop the robbers. So the two switched costumes and did a little trickery before beating up the bad guys. After this, he became a television star and would help out superheroes like Ghost Rider on occasion. He was just a really good guy. Until he wasn't. As he got older, he got less famous, so he decided to take Daredevil's The Man Without Fear nickname for himself, in order to get attention. And the way he went about this was hiring a new stunt master, a guy who's never been named before, who first appeared in Daredevil issue 11, released in December of 2014. The original stunt master would lure homeless people in and have them be stunt doubles for the new stunt master. They would then die during the stunts, and this new stunt master would then show up and be like, "See? I defied death. I have no fear." George then faked getting kidnapped by the new stuntmaster. The plan was for both Daredevil and the new stuntmaster to die during his rescue, but George would survive, becoming the Man Without Fear. But this didn't work, and Daredevil would defeat both stuntmasters. As for his powers, he has none. He's just a dude who's really good at driving a motorcycle. His motorcycle was modified though. It had jet engines that allowed it to fly in the air for short periods of time, and also could go extremely fast. What if the Punisher killed Daredevil? In What If, issue 26, released in April of 1991, we're introduced to a reality in which the Punisher accidentally killed Daredevil. During a fight, Punisher shoots Matt with a tranquilizer dart, as he doesn't want to actually kill him. But after getting hit with a tranq, Daredevil stumbles over to the building's edge and falls to his death. Punisher's not exactly happy that he killed Daredevil, but he's not about to turn himself in to the police. Once Spider-Man hears about the incident, he goes into a violent rage and confronts Punisher. The two fight, and Punisher wins, shooting Peter in the shoulder. Peter's then taken to a nearby hospital, and his identity gets leaked. This results in some criminals killing Aunt May by blowing up her house with an RPG. Spider-Man's just like, okay, I gotta kill the Punisher. So he confronts the Punisher, and this time, Peter nearly wins the fight. He only loses the fight because Punisher distracts Peter by mentioning Aunt May. Punisher then guns Spidey down. In the aftermath of killing two different superheroes, Punisher decides to continue his killing spree and kill Kingpin, but he fails and is killed by Fisk. only for Fisk to then get killed by a bomb sent to him by the Unabomber. No, could you imagine? This bomb was actually sent by Punisher before he died as a backup plan. Oh yeah, Ben Urich also dies in this story. A real feel-good universe. The Masked Marauder. First appearing in Daredevil issue 16, released in March of 1966, Frank Farnham has no backstory. When we're first introduced to him, he's already a supervillain. He first came into conflict with Daredevil after being beaten in a fight by Spider-Man. He had attempted to steal some blueprints to some experimental tech so that he could sell it on the black market, but Spidey stopped him and his gang. So Marauder decided to order his henchmen to dress up as Daredevil and tick Spider-Man off, in order to trick the web-slinger into thinking that Daredevil was a part of their gang. And while the two heroes fought, they would conduct the robbery. This actually worked for a brief period of time, which caused Daredevil to get involved and help Spider-Man put an end to Marauder's scheme. But where one scheme ends, another begins, as shortly after this, he overhears Foggy trying to impress Karen Page. So he began an investigation into Foggy, even creating an alliance with Gladiator in order to take him down, though he would find out that Foggy wasn't actually Daredevil, so he never actually, tried to fight Mr. Nelson. But he still worked with Gladiator to defeat Daredevil, though this plan didn't work, and they went their separate ways. Marauder would occasionally pop up to battle Daredevil and other superheroes, like Iron Man and Moon Knight, but he kinda fell into obscurity. He was seemingly killed along with various other villains when Punisher attacked Stilt-Man's wake. But he would return 16 years later and reveal that he was actually still alive. As for Marauder's powers, he doesn't have any, but he's a skilled engineer, so he's designed a bunch of different gadgets and weapons over the years, like infrared goggles that can fire energy blasts, a suit that could shoot out tear gas, a suit of armor that can absorb energy, a teleportation device, and an ionic dissembler. As for his appearances in media, he hasn't actually appeared in anything, although there are two characters in the MCU named Clyde and Tracy Farnham, who are very clearly named after him. Kingpin is literally possessed by greed. Remember earlier in the video when I talked about how Daredevil had to perform exorcisms? Well, these demons were the embodiments of the 7 deadly sins. And the demon representing greed possessed not a friend of Daredevil, but instead his arch-enemy, Kingpin. From Daredevil issue 10, released in June of 2024, to issue 12, released in August of the same year, Kingpin was possessed by the greed demon and did some trolling. He even almost killed Elektra. Daredevil himself wasn't actually able to defeat him in a fight. Because, after all, not only is Kingpin a great fighter, but he's being boosted by a literal demon. So how was Kingpin freed from his demonic possession? The power of Christ. Matt was only able to defeat Kingpin through an exorcism of sorts, using his love and belief in God to expel the demon from Fisk's body. And upon being freed, the crime lord thanked God for saving him. Advocate. In What If Daredevil vs. Elektra, released in December of 2009, we're introduced to a reality in which, instead of Elektra's father dying, Matt saved her dad, but at the cost of his life. After his death, his body was taken by the Hand, who resurrected him and turned him into their most deadly assassin. Meanwhile, Elektra was recruited into S.H.I.E.L.D. by Nick Fury. Years later, and Elektra is one of Fury's best agents, and she's assigned to investigate the recent murder of Kingpin and Bullseye. With some help from Stick and Foggy, she discovers that the Hand had Matt kill them. But it's not just them that he's been ordered to kill. Elektra realizes too late that Matt, now known as the Advocate, has been sent to eliminate Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. as a whole. When she returns to base, the Hand has already invaded. While S.H.I.E.L.D. puts up a good fight, Fury and most of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are killed in the fight. Their helicarrier base is even sent crashing. Elektra and Black Widow are some of the only survivors. She then meets up with Stick, who trains her for the fight ahead. Elektra then joins forces with a group of warriors, including Black Widow, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Wolverine, Echo, and the Silver Samurai, and together they go and attack the Hand. It's there that Elektra discovers that Matt has the severed heads of his enemies hung up around the base, including Stick's. Elektra and the Advocate fight, with Elektra coming out on top and killing him. The Fist. The Fist is a terrorist group that split off from the Hand and was dedicated to the destruction of the United States of America. And they actually succeeded in this mission, dismantling the government and leaving the country in a dystopian nightmare led by members of a future Sinister Six. Spider-Man 2099 was sent to this future for a bit, before returning to the present. He, along with Captain America 2099 and Elektra, were then able to prevent this future from happening, and battled the Fist along with their ally Medea. Yes, Medea from Greek mythology. This was seemingly the end of the Fist, or at least this Fist organization, because there was another Hand-related faction called the Fist. First appearing in Daredevil issue 4, released in October of 2022, this Fist organization is centuries old, and was an actual rival clan to the Hand. At some point, this group was either destroyed or the group disbanded, but the group would be revived by Daredevil and Elektra. They brought in heroes, villains, and civilians to join this group, like Cole North, Stick, Bullet, Agony, Speed Demon, Stilt-Man, Doc Sasquatch, Stegron the Dinosaur Man, etc. But why would they revive the Fist? Well, this was part of the Red Fist saga, a storyline that saw the Hand being led directly by the demon the Beast and the Punisher. So in order to defeat the Hand and their demonic leader, they needed their own army. They did pretty well in the war against the Hand, but the Fist would be destroyed after a massive attack on the group, and the revelation that Stick and Foggy were actually dead, and the versions of them that joined the group were Hand creations. The Devil Who Dares. In What If Daredevil, released in December of 2005, we're introduced to a reality where Matt Murdock isn't Daredevil. Instead, Matt is a former cabin boy who worked on a boat in the 1850s. While chilling out on the boat, an assassin was sent to attack the ship and killed the entire crew, excluding Matt. Wanting to avenge his fallen comrades, Matt spent the next 20 years of his life trying to track down the killer and called himself Bullseye. He eventually found himself working for the Yakuza boss, Giant Shogun, and was under the impression that a man named Masahiro, aka the Devil Who Dares, was the one who killed his friends and comrades. Now, as for the Devil Who Dares, as a child, Masahiro was blinded by the samurai the Owl during a fight with Masahiro's father. While originally not wanting to work for Giant Shogun, Masahiro's father went to him as he had been told that he can return Masahiro's eyesight. In exchange for his eyesight, his father needed to attack a foreign boat off the shore of Japan. That boat was the one that Matt was on. However, Masaharu's father betrayed the Shogun and destroyed the entire boat, destroying the weapons that Giant Shogun had intended to smuggle into Japan. In return, he was killed by Giant Shogun. Stick would then train Masaharu in combat, and the Devil Who Dares was born. Working together with Elektra, who also wanted revenge on Giant Shogun for the deaths of her parents, the two would battle Shogun's forces. During the final battle, Matt would learn the truth about his crewmates' death. And so, Matt betrayed Giant Shogun and allowed the Devil Who Dares to kill him.
We'll be right back to Marvel's Avengers, Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
The secret decoding shield of the dreaded Dr. Doom has ordered him to blow up the Freedom Tower. Here's how it works, Dr. Octopus. Just flip the secret message in the secret shield. Now our secret mission is revealed. How do we stop him, Captain America? That's our secret, Spider-Man.
And now back to Marvel's Avengers, Ultron Revolution on Disney XD.
1983 live-action show. In 1983, ABC hired Sterling Silliphant to write some pilots for the network. These included Longstreet, Travis McGee, and Daredevil. While the pilot for Daredevil was written, the pilot itself was never filmed, even though Longstreet and Travis McGee both had their pilots filmed. Unfortunately, there's nothing else known about this pilot, other than the fact that it was rejected. Daredevil is a hitman. First appearing in Exiles issue 62, released in April of 2005, not much is known about this universe's Daredevil. Instead of fighting crime, Matt was hired by Kingpin to act as his personal hitman. If I had to guess what happened to him, maybe after his father was killed, instead of Stick trading Matt, he was found by Kingpin or criminals working for Kingpin. Regardless of how he came to be, he was a murderer. While normally a villain, he did do some heroic acts, but it wasn't something that he wanted to do. One day, he was abducted by the multiversal species, the Timebreakers, who needed help in fixing realities that they had messed up. So they captured heroes and villains from across the multiverse and forced them to help. And this hitman Daredevil was one of them. After helping the bug people and being held a prisoner by them, he was sent back to his home reality, in which he continued his work for Kingpin. As for his powers, he's got all of Daredevil's normal abilities. Elektra movie tie-in game. Just like Daredevil 2003, the 2005 Elektra film received a video game tie-in. However, unlike Daredevil, it wasn't released for any consoles. Instead, it was released for mobile phones. This game is extremely basic. It's a beat-em-up game with a time limit, meaning that Elektra must clear stages before the timer goes down, and she dies instantly. The game actually tries to adapt to the film, as Elektra battles bad guys in locations from the film, including characters from the film, like Tattoo and Typhoid Mary. Speaking of characters from the film, Elektra isn't the only playable character. Abby Miller is also playable, which is very exciting for all Zero Abby Miller fans out there. The game also has very limited sound effects, which, while lame, is very common for mobile games of this era. Overall, it's a very strange little oddity, and will most likely be the only solo Elektra game ever made. Victoria Murdock. First appearing in Human Torch issue 27, released in May of 1947, Victoria Murdock, aka the Asbestos Lady, was a supervillain who fought against the original android Human Torch in the aftermath of World War II. Her rivalry with the Human Torch was made very personal when her brother, Killer Murdock, was defeated by the Human Torch. He'd then be sentenced to death and executed, so she wanted revenge on him. She was actually the perfect foe for the Human Torch, as the suit she wore was made of asbestos, which made her immune to fire. You know, Human Torch's whole thing. She would fight Human Torch a few times before retiring from doing crime, because, well, her costume was made of asbestos, and that causes cancer. So, yeah, she developed cancer and died. As for her powers, she had none, but she did use a flamethrower and pistols that fired asbestos-laced bullets. Now you're probably wondering why I'm talking about her, as she has nothing to do with Daredevil. In fact, she predates the character by over a decade. Well, I'm talking about her because she might actually be related to Matt Murdock. In Marvel Comics Index 9B, released in April of 1982, it's briefly mentioned that Victoria might be a distant relative to Matt Murdock. This connection has never been mentioned anywhere else though, so it's probably not true, but it is noteworthy. As for her appearances in media, she's surprisingly appeared in LEGO Marvel Avengers Mission Demolition. Daredevil 2003 is banned in Malaysia. Yes, you heard right. A few weeks before the release of Daredevil 2003, the Film Censorship Board of Malaysia banned the film in the country. 20th Century Fox was pretty shocked by this, and contacted the board to see if they could censor some things in the film in order to get it released there. But they rejected these offers, as films that feature, quote, excessive violence and sexual material which could create chaos in the community could not be released in the country. No, really, they were worried that Daredevil 2003 was somehow gonna create chaos in Malaysia. That, and they were also afraid the film would cause kids to worship somebody with devil in their name. This was an extremely unpopular decision in the country, but despite this, to this day, Daredevil 2003 is still banned in Malaysia. Daredevil becomes Jack Murdock. From Daredevil issue 284, released in July of 1990, to Daredevil issue 289, released in December of the same year, Matt had amnesia and forgot everything about himself. Except for one thing, Jack Murdock. But because he had no memory, he just assumed that Jack Murdock was his real name, and so became a boxer under that name. While this is all happening, Bullseye is pretending to be Daredevil and causing chaos around Hell's Kitchen. But Matt, or Jack in this case, doesn't really care all that much, since it's not his job to stop him. He just has to box. Well, that and rob. He befriended a woman named Nyla Skin, who asked him to go rob somebody together, but Jack wasn't super into it, and refused to actually steal anything. The two would then fall in love, which is something that Bullseye took advantage of and kidnapped her. With the help of Ben Urich, Jack remembered that he was in fact Matt Murdock, Daredevil, and so he rescued Nyla and broke up with her because he didn't want her to get caught up in the dangers that came with dating him. She would later get into some more superpowered hijinks with Conan the Barbarian, Scarlet Spider, Black Panther, Mephisto, and Namor. Daredevil costed Charlie Cox a role in Star Wars. So here's a real quick one. Charlie Cox auditioned for the role of Han Solo in the film Solo: A Star Wars Story, and he may have gotten the role, if not for starring in Daredevil. In order to prepare for his role as Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox had practiced acting like a blind man, and so, while filming the show, he got insanely good at it. So good, in fact, that when he went to audition for Star Wars, he unconsciously kept doing it, and stared past the person he was talking to during his audition. Halfway through the audition, the casting director stopped him and asked him what he was doing, and according to Charlie Cox, they never invited him back, most likely due to them thinking that he was acting like an idiot. The Torpedo. First appearing in Daredevil issue 126, released in July of 1975, Michael Stivic was a scientist from Yugoslavia who was working on a suit of armor for the United States military. He was pretty proud of his work, but came to regret his engineering skills, as his uncle and father were members of the criminal group The Corporation, and they were planning on using Michael's suit of armor, called the Torpedo Armor, and using it to take over the United States. They also lied to him about working for the US military. In actuality, he was making the suit for the corporation, though it wasn't just his engineering skills that made this suit possible. The corporation was being aided by an alien menace called the Dire Wraiths, who wanted this suit to take on the hero Rom the Space Knight. Discovering this, Michael attempted to trick his family into taking a weaker version of the suit, but this didn't work. Though this weaker suit would serve as the basis for the Rocketeers, a group of specialized soldiers in the corporation. In order to prevent the corporation from getting the suit design documents, Michael traveled to the United States and attempted to destroy them, but he was in the torpedo armor while doing so, and since he was also breaking into a vault to destroy them, he kind of looked like a supervillain. So when Daredevil showed up, he thought that he was the bad guy. They fought for a bit, and Michael was accidentally killed, but before he died, he asked a random stranger, Brock Jones, to take his torpedo suit and become a superhero. So he did. First appearing in this very issue, literally the second he put the armor on, Daredevil thought that he was the same Torpedo as before, and so thought that he was a bad guy, though they didn't stay enemies forever, as they would eventually work together to defeat the Chameleon during another adventure. He would actually work with a bunch of other heroes, like Hellcat, Goliath, Falcon, Iron Fist, and most famously, the Space Knight Rom. He actually became really good friends with Rom and helped him battle the Dire Wraiths, only to eventually die at their hands. As for Michael and Brock's powers, the torpedo armor could create beams of energy from its gauntlets and chest. It also allowed whoever used it to fly. The suit could also absorb radiation and fire it back out, and gave the user super strength. Before moving on, I guess I should also mention the other torpedo. Only appearing in Daredevil issue 59, released in October of 1969, Torpedo was a cowboy-inspired mercenary who battled Daredevil after he was hired to kill the police officer, Willie Lincoln, and he fell to his death while battling Daredevil. As for his powers, he had none, but he carried a laser gun with him, along with a hat with razor-sharp edges that could slice through material as thick as metal. Captain of Cosmos. Released in August of 1979, Captain of Cosmos is an anime film that rips off the original Mobile Suit Gundam anime pretty heavily. I mean, just look at the poster. After its release in 1979, it fell into obscurity due to the fact that it was a rather low-budget film, and, well, like I said, it was a ripoff. It never really saw success, but it did receive a bit of notoriety in the 21st century, because as people stumbled upon it, they realized that this film didn't just rip off Gundam, it also ripped off Marvel. In the middle of the movie, several Marvel villains show up to battle the titular Captain of Cosmos, Captain Leo. These villains being Mr. Hyde, Cobra, and Daredevil villains Gladiator and Jester. Obviously, they're not actually the comic characters. In the film, they're warriors, part of the villain's empire. It's just that the animation studio behind the film ripped these designs from Marvel. What if Kingpin owned Daredevil? In What If issue 73, released in March of 1995, we're introduced to a reality in which Daredevil works for Kingpin. Yes, I talked about that Hitman Daredevil earlier, but this time we actually get a story centered around him. After Jack Murdock is killed, Kingpin sends one of his agents to give his condolences to Matt, and to offer him any help if he needs it. Matt then meets with Fisk, and Kingpin offers to train Matt to get revenge on his father's killers. Matt decides to join Fisk's criminal empire, and is trained by Kingpin personally. His father's killers are then killed one by one, and Matt becomes fully loyal to Fisk, even abandoning Stick. As he gets older, he becomes a lawyer who defends Fisk and Vanessa from all kinds of lawsuits. Although he gets tired of all of this, and convinces Fisk to cut off all of his ties to the criminal underworld. But Fisk's biological son, Richard, is not about to let that happen, because he's become pretty jealous of how much Kingpin cares for Matt. Fisk is then killed by Richard's henchmen, leaving Matt in a state of absolute rage. He kills Richard's henchmen and then executes Richard. In the aftermath, he and Vanessa are devastated by Fisk's death, and Matt is expected by the rest of the gang to take Fisk's spot as Kingpin. The story ends as Matt debates on whether or not he should become the Kingpin. It's not all doom and gloom, though, as Elektra gets a happy ending in this universe. Her father lives, and she opens up an international law firm. Foggy, on the other hand, has a pretty sad ending, though. He's bullied out of law school and ends up at a dead-end job. So, okay, maybe it's kind of all doom and gloom. The Nobu controversy. In 2020, actor Peter Shinkoda, the actor who played Nobu in the first 2 seasons of Daredevil, claimed that Nobu wasn't given much of a story in the show due to the heads-up at Marvel Television at the time being racist. Jeff Loeb, in particular, claiming that Loeb even told the show's writers directly to not write stories for Nobu and Madame Gao, because, quote, nobody cares about Chinese people and Asian people. Apparently, Jeff Loeb even used the Blade trilogy as evidence of this, as Blade kills a bunch of Asian people in those films. According to Peter Shinkoda, Nobu was supposed to do much more in the series, but because of Loeb, all of these plans had to be scrapped. Most of these plans were seemingly parts of Season 2. While Jeff Loeb has never responded publicly to these claims, Season 1's showrunner, Stephen DeKnight, did, and said that nobody tried to make him downplay Nobu or other Asian characters in the first season. Daredevil and Doctor Doom swap bodies. In Daredevil issue 37, released in December of 1967, Daredevil's ambushed by Doctor Doom, and the two battle it out throughout the issue. Just kidding, Daredevil gets knocked out almost instantly, because, well, it's Doctor Doom. Doom captures Matt and brings him to the New York Latverian embassy. Daredevil's able to escape his cell and tries to take on Doom in a round 2, but this also ends with him losing. That's when Doom reveals why he brought Matt to the embassy. He wants to swap bodies with him so that he can get close to the Fantastic Four and defeat them. So Doom uses a body transferal device to swap bodies with Daredevil, leaving Matt trapped inside Doom's body while he goes out to take on the Fantastic Four. But there's one major problem with Doom's plan. This body swap just put Matt inside of the leader of an entire country. So in order to prevent Doom from using his body to attack the Fantastic Four, Matt literally declares war on every single country that borders Latveria. Doom quickly returns to the embassy to swap bodies and to tell the Latverian army that it was all just a prank. While he's doing this, Daredevil destroys Doom's body swap device, and Doom's just like, alright, you won, you can go. But right after Daredevil does just that, Doom uses a voice modifier to trick the Fantastic Four into thinking that Daredevil's Doom in disguise. So when Daredevil shows up to the Baxter building, the Fantastic Four attack him. Luckily for Matt, Spider-Man and Thor believe him and help him convince the Fantastic Four that he's not Doom. The Quiga. First appearing in Daredevil issue 28, released in March of 1967, the Quiga are an alien race that planned on taking over the Earth by using a device to make every human being blind. They then would take all of Earth's natural resources and bring them back to their home planet. During a trip to a college, in order to give a lecture on the legal issues that would occur if aliens tried to land on Earth, Matt comes face to face with the Quiga. Yes, Matt was asked to give a lecture at a college about the legality of aliens landing on Earth. Anyways, upon meeting the aliens, they fight, and Matt loses when he's hit with a freeze ray. The aliens then abduct him and make him an offer after being impressed with his fighting skills. They ask him to join their alien empire with the promise of being able to restore his eyesight. Daredevil, of course, refuses the offer and breaks free from his captors. As he's fighting the aliens, they activate their superweapon, and every person on Earth becomes blind. Armed with snowballs, Matt continues his fight against the aliens, and dodges another blast of the freeze ray, but because he dodged it, the freeze ray hits the superweapon, destroying it, and restoring everyone's eyesight. The aliens then leave Earth and never return. We know that they never returned because it's mentioned in a comic released decades later that the Skrulls literally wiped out their entire species. Vulture tries to convince Foggy into Avengers endgaming himself. In Daredevil issue 225, released in August of 1985, Nelson and Murdock goes out of business due to the pair not getting clients anymore, so they can't exactly afford to keep paying rent for the office. Losing his livelihood hits Foggy really hard, and he snaps at Matt, yelling at him, saying that he let him down, and that he's responsible for all of this, as he's been telling Matt about the lack of clients for weeks, and Matt just ignored him. That, and he also just didn't come around the office nearly as much as he used to. Depressed about the situation, and the fact that he recently got divorced, and his friend Heather recently took her own life, Foggy takes an elevator to Nelson and Murdock's roof and debates on whether or not he should Avengers endgame himself. That's when Vulture shows up and tries to convince Foggy that he should jump. And it's possible that Foggy would've, if not for Daredevil showing up and convincing him not to, and then beating the crap out of the Vulture. Mysterio tricks Daredevil into thinking that a baby is the Antichrist and must be killed. In Daredevil issue 1, released in September of 1998, Mysterio is diagnosed with brain cancer and decides that he wants a superhero to take him out. So he enacts a scheme to make Daredevil go crazy, so he'll end up killing him. The whole Karen getting diagnosed with AIDS thing was part of this scheme, but the craziest parts of this scheme involved a woman named Gwyneth, a 16-year-old girl who Mysterio had kidnapped and impregnated via artificial insemination. She carried this baby to term after Mysterio had her parents killed. She and the baby were forced to live on the street, which is where they came into contact with Daredevil. She began to have drug-induced hallucinations and believed that her child was the reincarnation of Jesus. She then gave the baby to Matt, claiming that visions told her that he needed to watch over the child and that he was Daredevil. Matt then has Black Widow babysit the kid while he investigates, and during this investigation, he's told that the baby is not actually the reincarnation of Jesus, but instead the Antichrist. And if the baby lives, all of Matt's friends will suffer terrible fates, and the world will eventually end. He then returns to the baby and tries to throw it off of a building. Luckily, Black Widow is there to save the kid, and decides to take the kid with her for the time being. Daredevil would later meet back up with Black Widow and beat her up in order to take the baby, but before he could kill it, he snapped out of it and gave the baby to Sister Maggie, only for the baby to then get kidnapped by Bullseye, who was hired by Mysterio. This is where Karen is killed. Matt's able to eventually save the baby, and Mysterio endgames himself. I should also mention that Matt only believed these Antichrist accusations because Mysterio had actually poisoned him with a drug that made him very susceptible to suggestions. Oh yeah, also, that baby was believed by some to be the reincarnation of Stick. But this storyline never went anywhere, and Stick has since returned to life, so the baby is probably not Stick the sequel. Elektra killed Joe Biden. Okay, no, Elektra did not technically kill Joe Biden, but she kinda did. Not really. This entry title is a little bit clickbaity, I'll admit. In Daredevil issue 6, released in December of 2022, after winning the 2020 US presidential election and becoming the president, Joe Biden was assassinated by the Hand, who then had a puppet version of him created to serve as president in his place. Elektra would then confront the puppeteered president, and in response to this confrontation, Joe would Avengers endgame himself in order to trick the world into thinking that Elektra had just assassinated the president. This works for a time, and Elektra would become a wanted criminal. She's then proven innocent by Joe Biden himself. Remember when I talked about Matt's white suit and how he went into hell to save his friends? Well, he saved everyone who was recently killed by the Hand, including Joe Biden. So Joe was brought back to life and told everyone what happened. And that'll be it, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs out there. That was the Daredevil Iceberg. I hope you all enjoyed. I thought it was fun to make, and I think it's pretty good. A few things before I wrap up. One is, did you guys like Daredevil Born Again? I thought it was pretty good. Had its issues, obviously, because it was a bit confused because of the, it's a Frankenstein of a show, but I thought it was pretty good. Secondly, in regards to the channel membership stuff, don't feel obligated to do it. Like, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. Only do it if you're financially stable and stuff like that, so you want to do it. No pressure, no nothing like that. I was very hesitant to do memberships and stuff like that because I don't know. I don't know. I've never done anything like this before, so I don't want to mess up, I guess you could say. I don't know. Again, if you guys have any ideas for how this can improve, or what I can do differently, let me know as soon as possible. Don't hesitate. Put it in a comment, a channel post, like a community post I put out or whatever. Like, just tell me. And the last thing I want to talk about real quick is the last video, the Terminator Iceberg. I mentioned at the very end, I was just like, say, Arnold's cool if you got to at the end of the video. I didn't think there would be a lot of them, but there was a lot of them in the comments. So, if you stuck around to the end, to the outro, you're a real one. I really appreciate it. I really do appreciate all the support I get. But yeah, no, because I've thought about cutting these outros a lot of the times, but I mean, people are still here. And if you got to the end of the video, let me know in the comments. You're the outro gang, the ever iconic outro gang. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Hope you guys enjoyed. Next Iceberg should be out in May. Next superhero Iceberg will be around the release of Fantastic Four First Steps. Shocker, I'm doing a Fantastic Four Iceberg eventually. Green Lantern will be later this year. Don't worry, I'm not gonna keep postponing it. All right. With all that being said, take care, all that kind of stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah.